The champagne flute shattered against marble with a sound that cut through the laughter like a blade. Damon Cross stood perfectly still as red wine dripped from his sleeve, watching the senior executive's smirk widen into something uglier. Around them, 200 colleagues in evening wear had gone silent, their phones already raised, recording. This was the moment they'd been building toward all night, the quiet IT guy and the awkward marketing woman, seated together like some cruel social experiment, finally providing the entertainment they'd been waiting for. But what none of them knew, what not a single person in that glittering ballroom could possibly suspect, was that Damon Cross had been counting down to this exact moment for 6 months. And now, with his daughter's tearful voice still echoing in his ear from the phone call he'd just received, he was finally ready to burn it all down. If you want to see how far the truth can travel when one man decides he's done being invisible, stay with me until the end. Drop a like and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story goes. The Sinclair Tower Conference Center had been transformed into something out of a luxury magazine. Crystal chandeliers cast geometric patterns across cream-colored walls. Ice sculptures shaped like the company logo stood sentinel at each corner of the ballroom. White-gloved servers moved through clusters of executives and mid-level managers with trays of champagne and canapes that probably cost more than Damon's monthly rent. Damon Cross adjusted his tie and scanned the room with the practiced neutrality he'd perfected over the past 6 months. Black tuxedo, simple but well-fitted. Hair freshly cut. Expression pleasant but forgettable. He'd become a master at being exactly what people expected to see when they looked at him. Competent enough to belong, unremarkable enough to ignore. Damon, right? IT support? A woman from accounting whose name he'd never learned touched his elbow. You're at table 17, I'm way in the back, I think. Appreciate it, he said with a slight smile, the kind that didn't invite further conversation. Table 17 was indeed in the back, positioned so far from the executive platform that the people seated there would need binoculars to see the awards presentation. Damon had expected nothing less. He'd watched the seating assignments come together over the past week, watched the deliberate sorting of bodies by perceived importance. The executives and their favorites up front, the dependable middle managers in the center, everyone else pushed to the margins. As he approached his assigned table, he noticed a woman already seated, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her burgundy dress elegant but understated. She was staring at her phone with the kind of intense focus people use when they're pretending not to notice they've been seated alone. "Is this seat taken?" Damon asked, gesturing to the chair beside her. She looked up, and for just a moment something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe? Or recognition of a fellow outsider. "Only if you're Damon Cross from IT." "Guilty." He sat down, setting his drink on the table. "And you are?" "Vanessa Hale. Marketing." She extended her hand and he shook it. Her grip was firm, professional. "Looks like we've been placed together by the social committee." "Lucky us," Damon said dryly. Vanessa's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "I'm sure it's completely coincidental that the only 2 single parents of color in this division ended up at the same table." Damon raised an eyebrow. She'd said it quietly, but there was an edge beneath the words. "You think they actually put that much thought into it?" "Oh, absolutely." Vanessa leaned back in her chair, her eyes tracking across the room. "Table assignments are never random at these things. It's all about optics. Look." She gestured subtly toward the front tables. All the executives and their direct reports, then the high performers who made their numbers this year, then everyone else, carefully arranged by unofficial importance. And we're the everyone else. We're the diversity hires they trot out for the annual report photos, Vanessa said, her voice flat. Except they seat us far enough back that we don't actually interact with anyone important. Damon studied her for a moment. Vanessa Hale. He'd read her personnel file 3 months ago. Bachelor's degree in marketing from a state school, MBA completed at night while raising a daughter alone. 7 years with the company, 3 promotions, consistent high-performance reviews, and yet somehow still stuck at a level where her ideas were regularly attributed to other people. "You seem like you've given this some thought," he said carefully. 6 years of thought, Vanessa replied. "You learn to read the patterns." Before Damon could respond, a burst of laughter erupted from a table near theirs. A group of junior executives, already several drinks in, were watching their table with barely concealed amusement. One of them, a blonde woman in a dress that probably cost more than Vanessa's car payment, leaned over to whisper something to her companion. They both laughed. Vanessa's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. And so it begins. What begins? The entertainment portion of the evening. She picked up her water glass, her movements carefully controlled. Just wait. Someone will come over in about 5 minutes with a comment about how nice it is that we found each other. Then the jokes will start. By the end of the night, we'll be the running gag. Damon felt something cold settle in his chest. He'd witnessed this dynamic before, documented it in his reports. But hearing Vanessa describe it with such weary precision drove home just how normalized the cruelty had become. Has this happened to you before? He asked. Every company event for the past 3 years, Vanessa said. Ever since my ex-husband left and I became officially categorizable as a single mom. Before that, I was just invisible. Now I'm visible in all the wrong ways. She said it without self-pity, just stating facts. Damon recognized that tone. It was the same one he used when explaining to his daughter Maya why some kids' parents didn't want them playing together. I have a daughter, Damon found himself saying. Maya, she's 8. Vanessa's expression softened slightly. Lily's 9, 4th grade. Maya's in 3rd, smart as hell, wants to be a scientist. Lily wants to be an architect. A genuine smile crossed Vanessa's face for the first time. She's been designing houses since she could hold a pencil. For a moment, the noise of the party fell away, and Damon saw past the professional armor Vanessa wore, saw the exhaustion beneath it, the constant calculation of how to navigate a world that seemed designed to diminish her. He recognized it because he saw it in the mirror every morning. My mama watches Maya during these things, Damon said. I always feel guilty leaving her. Lily's with my sister tonight, and yes, same. Vanessa's fingers traced the stem of her water glass. The mom guilt is real, especially when you know you're missing bedtime for something like this. Something like forced corporate socializing with people who look at us like we're the punchline to a joke they're all in on? Vanessa laughed, a real laugh that seemed to surprise her. Exactly that. The moment broke when a shadow fell across their table. Damon looked up to find Brad Hutchins standing there with a drink in each hand and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Brad was a senior manager in sales, the kind of guy who called everyone buddy, and told the same 3 stories at every company gathering. Well, Brad said, his voice carrying across nearby tables. Looks like the matchmaking committee did their job. Damon and Vanessa sitting in a tree. Hello, Brad, Vanessa said coolly. Lovely to see you too. I'm just saying, it's nice when people have things in common, you know? Brad gestured with his drink, sloshing slightly. Kids, busy schedules, all that. The company's looking out for you two. Damon kept his expression neutral, but his fingers tightened around his water glass. He'd dealt with Brad Hutchins before. The man was a master of plausible deniability, every insult wrapped in a compliment, every microaggression dressed up as friendly concern. We appreciate the seating arrangement, Damon said evenly. Great view of the ice sculptures from back here. Brad blinked, momentarily thrown by the lack of reaction. Then his smile widened. That's the spirit. Hey, you know what? I should introduce you two to some people. Network a little. Can't spend the whole night hiding in the back, right? Actually, we're fine here, Vanessa said, but thank you for the offer. Come on, don't be shy. You never know who might be able to help with the next promotion, if you know what I mean. Brad winked, as if he'd just shared valuable career advice instead of a thinly veiled reminder of their lower status. Damon felt his jaw clench. This was it. This was the dynamic that had driven 3 talented employees out of the company in the past year alone. The constant, grinding reminder that you were tolerated but not valued, present but not important, visible but not seen. Brad, a new voice called from across the room. Get over here, we're taking shots. Duty calls, Brad said with exaggerated regret. But seriously, you two should mingle. Make some friends. This is a party, not a funeral. He wandered off, leaving a wake of cologne and condescension. Vanessa waited until he was out of earshot before speaking. See? Right on schedule. 5 minutes and 30 seconds. You timed it? I've gotten good at predicting these things. She picked up her menu card, studying it with forced interest. Next will be someone asking if we're together. Then someone will make a comment about us both being articulate. By dessert, if we're lucky, someone will have too much to drink and say the quiet part loud. Damon should have been shocked by her cynicism. Instead, he felt a wave of recognition. She'd been documenting too, in her own way. Not with hidden recordings and detailed notes like he was, but with the kind of pattern recognition that came from years of navigating hostile spaces. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "how do you do it? Come to these things, smile, pretend it doesn't bother you." She was silent for a long moment. When she finally looked at him, her eyes held something raw and honest. "Because Lily's watching. Because I need this job to give her the stability I never had. Because walking away means they win, and I'm not ready to let them win. Even if it's killing you? Even then." The rawness in her voice cut through all of Damon's professional distance. For 6 months, he'd been observing from behind his disguise, taking notes, gathering evidence. He told himself it was necessary, that he needed to see the truth of how the company operated when they thought no one important was watching. But sitting here with Vanessa, hearing the exhaustion in her voice, he realized there was a cost to his investigation that he hadn't fully calculated. Every day he spent undercover was another day that people like Vanessa suffered through the casual cruelty he was documenting. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. Vanessa looked surprised. "For what?" "That you've had to develop such thick skin. That this place has made you into someone who can predict their own humiliation down to the minute." Something shifted in Vanessa's expression. She studied him with new intensity, as if really seeing him for the first time. "You're different from the others." "How so?" "You actually listen. Most people in this company treat conversations like performances. They're just waiting for their turn to talk." She paused. "But you listen like you're trying to understand something." Damon felt a flicker of alarm. He'd been careful to maintain his cover, to be forgettable and unassuming. But Vanessa was observant in ways that could be dangerous to his investigation. "Maybe I'm just tired of performing," he said carefully. Before Vanessa could respond, the lights dimmed and a spotlight hit the main stage. Stephen Whitmore, the division president, strode to the microphone in a tuxedo that probably cost more than Damon's car. He was 55, silver-haired, with the kind of confident bearing that came from never having been told no. "Good evening, everyone," Whitmore's voice boomed through the sound system. "Welcome to the 32nd Annual Sinclair Corporation Holiday Gala." Polite applause rippled through the ballroom. Damon watched Whitmore work the room with practiced ease, making eye contact with the important tables, acknowledging the executives by name. When his gaze swept over the back section where Damon and Vanessa sat, it passed over them without the slightest pause. Invisible, Damon thought. Exactly as planned. "Tonight, we celebrate an incredible year," Whitmore continued. "Record revenues, unprecedented growth, and most importantly, the talented people who make it all possible." Vanessa made a soft sound that might have been a laugh or a scoff. "Something funny?" Damon asked quietly. "He's going to spend 20 minutes talking about how much he values the team," Vanessa whispered. "Then he'll give out awards to the same 5 people who get awards every year. Then we'll eat rubber chicken and pretend we're all one big happy family." "Cynical much?" "Realistic." She leaned closer, her voice barely audible under Whitmore's speech. "Watch. He'll mention diversity and inclusion at least 3 times. He'll talk about creating opportunities for everyone. And then on Monday, it'll be business as usual. The same people making the same decisions, and the rest of us still trying to get someone to read our emails." Damon found himself smiling despite the situation. Vanessa's clear-eyed assessment of corporate theater was refreshing after 6 months of carefully maintained neutrality. "You've given up on things changing," he observed. "I've accepted reality," Vanessa corrected. "There's a difference. I still do my job, still push for my ideas, still fight for Lily's future. I just don't expect this place to suddenly become fair." On stage, Whitmore was indeed talking about diversity and inclusion now, his words floating over the crowd like expensive perfume, pleasant, artificial, and quickly dispersed. "What if it could be different?" Damon heard himself ask. "What if there was a way to actually make them accountable?" Vanessa turned to look at him fully. In the dimmed lighting, her face was half in shadow. "That's a dangerous question, Damon from IT." Is it? It implies you have hope. Hope gets you hurt in places like this. Before Damon could respond, Whitmore announced the first award of the night. As predicted, it went to Derek Chen, a senior account manager who'd been with the company for 15 years and whose main talent seemed to be agreeing with whatever Whitmore said. The ceremony continued exactly as Vanessa had predicted. Same winners, same speeches, same self-congratulatory atmosphere. Damon let it wash over him, his mind already moving ahead to the next phase of his investigation. What he needed now was the last piece, the undeniable evidence of systemic culture problems that even the board couldn't ignore. He had documents, emails, recorded conversations, but he needed something visceral, something that would make the truth impossible to deny. He just hadn't expected it to be so personal. Dinner was served between awards. The food was indeed mediocre despite the elegant presentation. Damon picked at his salmon while listening to the conversations around them. At the next table, a group of managers were rating female employees' appearances. 3 tables over, someone told a joke about affirmative action that got uncomfortable laughter. Vanessa heard it too. He watched her shoulders tense, watched her carefully school her expression into professional blankness. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Always," she said, but her knuckles were white around her fork. As dessert was being served, Brad Hutchins returned, this time with 3 colleagues in tow. They were all red-faced from alcohol, all grinning with the aggressive friendliness of drunk men who thought they were being charming. "Damon! Vanessa!" Brad announced loudly enough to draw attention from surrounding tables. "We've been talking, and we think you two make a great couple. Really great." Vanessa's expression went carefully blank. "We're colleagues, Brad. Just 2 people assigned to the same table." Sure, Brad said, winking broadly. "That's how it always starts, right, guys?" His friends laughed on cue. Damon felt anger building in his chest, hot and righteous. He forced himself to breathe evenly, to maintain his cover. Not yet. Not yet. "Seriously, though," Brad continued, leaning against their table, "it's nice seeing you two get along. You know, people who understand each other's situations." "Situations," Vanessa repeated flatly. "You know, single parents, working hard, all that." Brad gestured vaguely. "It's tough out there. Nice to have someone who gets it." One of Brad's friends, a guy named Kyle from operations, decided to contribute. "My wife always says single moms are heroes, really. She says she couldn't do it alone." "How generous of her," Vanessa said, her voice arctic. Kyle missed the sarcasm entirely. "And Damon, man, I respect what you're doing, being there for your kid. Not all guys step up, you know?" Damon felt his jaw clench harder. The praise was somehow more insulting than outright hostility. The implication that he deserved special credit for basic parental responsibility, that his presence in his daughter's life was exceptional rather than expected. "I'm just being her father," Damon said evenly. "Nothing heroic about it." "Still, good for you, man. Good for you." Kyle clapped him on the shoulder with drunk camaraderie. Brad's phone buzzed. He looked at it and grinned. "Oh, this is perfect. Guys, check it out. I just got sent a photo from the West Side School winter concert. My son's class picture." He held up his phone, showing a typical class photo of 8-year-olds in festive sweaters. Then his grin took on a sharper edge. "That's Maya's school," Damon said quietly. "My daughter goes there." "Does she?" Brad's grin widened. "Small world. Wonder if she's in the same class as my Tyler." Something in Brad's tone sent a warning signal through Damon's mind. But before he could process it, his own phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw his mother's name on the screen. "Excuse me," he said, standing. "I need to take this." He stepped away from the table, heading toward the hallway outside the ballroom. Behind him, he could hear Brad and his friends still laughing, still holding court at Vanessa's table. "Mama?" Damon answered. "What's wrong?" "Baby, I'm sorry to call during your work thing, but..." His mother's voice was strained. "It's Maya. She's real upset. Something happened at school today, and she just now broke down about it." Damon's heart clenched. "What happened? Is she hurt?" "Not hurt, but... Damon, she's crying, really crying. Says a boy at school told her she doesn't belong there, that kids like her should go to different schools. And baby, the things he said about you..." Ice flooded Damon's veins. "Put her on." There was a shuffling sound, then his daughter's voice, small and broken in a way that made his chest hurt. "Daddy? Hey, baby girl, I'm here. What happened?" Through tears, Maya told him. Told him about Tyler Hutchins cornering her after school, about the words Tyler had used, words no 8-year-old comes up with on their own. About how Tyler had said Maya's dad was just a computer guy, not important like his dad. About how Tyler had called her names that made Damon's hand shake with fury. And he said, Maya's voice broke. He said, people like us should be grateful we're even allowed to be there. Daddy, what does that mean? Why wouldn't we be allowed? Damon closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against the cool wall of the hallway. Behind him, through the ballroom doors, he could hear music and laughter. Inside, Brad Hutchins was probably still entertaining everyone at Vanessa's expense, probably heading back to brag about his wonderful son. Maya, Damon said, keeping his voice steady through sheer force of will. Listen to me, baby. There is nothing wrong with you. Nothing. You belong everywhere you want to be. And what that boy said? Those aren't his words. They're his father's words coming out of his mouth. But why would his daddy say those things? Because some people are scared of anything different from them. And instead of dealing with their fear, they try to make others feel small. Damon opened his eyes, staring back toward the ballroom. But you are not small, Maya. You are brilliant and strong and exactly where you belong. I want you to come home, Daddy. I will, baby. Soon. I promise. Damon's voice hardened. But first, Daddy has to do something. Something important. What? I have to make sure no other little girl ever has to cry like you're crying right now. He spoke with his mother for another minute, making sure Maya was settling down, making sure she knew he loved her. When he hung up, he stood in the hallway for a long moment, his phone still gripped in his hand. 6 months. 6 months of documentation, of careful investigation, of maintaining his cover. 6 months of watching good people get worn down, of seeing talent overlooked, of documenting a culture of casual cruelty. And now it had touched his daughter. Damon straightened his shoulders, adjusted his tie, and walked back into the ballroom. The party had shifted into its final phase, dessert finished, music playing, people mingling with the false intimacy of corporate drunk. He made his way back to table 17. Vanessa was alone again. She looked up as he approached, and whatever she saw in his face made her eyes widen. Damon, what happened? Brad Hutchins' son, Damon said quietly, sitting down. Tyler. He bullied my daughter today, used words he clearly learned at home. Vanessa's hand went to her mouth. Oh no. Is Maya okay? She's scared, confused, crying to her grandmother because she doesn't understand why people hate her for existing. Damon's voice was controlled, but beneath it, fury burned like a banked fire. She's 8 years old, Vanessa. 8. I'm so sorry, Vanessa said, and he could hear that she meant it, could hear in her voice that she understood exactly what that kind of pain felt like. The worst part? Damon looked across the ballroom to where Brad was now standing with Stephen Whitmore and 2 other executives, all of them laughing at some shared joke. He doesn't even know, doesn't even realize what his son did, what his words became in his child's mouth. And if someone told him, he'd probably make excuses. Boys will be boys. Kids are cruel. It's not his fault. That's how it always goes, Vanessa said softly. The powerful are never responsible for the consequences of their power. Damon turned to look at her, really look at her. Saw not just the exhausted professional or the defensive single mother, but a woman who'd been fighting the same battle he had, just without his resources, without his secret identity, without his exit strategy. What if they could be held responsible? He asked. What would that look like? Damon, I'm serious. What would accountability actually look like in a place like this? Vanessa studied him for a long moment. The noise of the party swirled around them, but in their small corner there was a strange stillness. Consequences, she finally said. Real ones. Not diversity training that everyone sleeps through. Not a stern email about company values. Actual consequences for actual harm. And if you could make that happen, what would you do? I'd start with the truth, Vanessa said. I'd make them see what they've been pretending not to see. I'd hold up a mirror and force them to look at who they really are when they think no one important is watching. Damon nodded slowly. The truth, yeah. That's where it has to start. Before Vanessa could ask what he meant, a commotion erupted near the bar. Brad Hutchins and his friends were getting louder, their laughter taking on an aggressive edge, and they were looking at table 17. "Oh no," Vanessa murmured. Brad was walking toward them now, flanked by Kyle and two others, all of them moving with the dangerous confidence of drunk men who'd never been told no. The conversations around them quieted. Phones came out. Everyone could sense something was about to happen. Brad reached their table and planted both hands on it, leaning forward with a grin that had gone from condescending to cruel. "So," he said loudly, playing to the crowd that was forming, "how's the romance going? You two figured out your situation yet?" Damon felt Vanessa tense beside him, felt the attention of the room shifting toward them like a spotlight. "Brad," Vanessa said carefully, "you're drunk. Maybe I should what? Stop being friendly?" Brad's grin sharpened. "I'm just trying to help. Someone has to look out for you two, right? Make sure you're not just sitting here all sad and lonely." "We're fine," Damon said, his voice low and controlled. "Thank you for your concern." "Are you, though? Fine?" Brad straightened up, addressing the growing crowd around them. "Because from where I'm standing, you both look pretty isolated, pretty cut off from the real action. Makes sense, though, right? You guys stick together because no one else really gets it." The words hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Kyle laughed nervously. "Brad, man, maybe—" No, I'm being real here." Brad was fully committed now, feeding off the attention. "It's just facts, right? Damon does his IT thing, keeps the computers running. Vanessa makes her pretty marketing materials. Everyone has their role. Everyone stays in their lane." "Brad," Vanessa said, standing up. Her voice shook slightly, but she held her ground. "You need to stop, now." "Or what?" Brad spread his hands innocently. "I'm just making conversation, just pointing out what everyone's thinking anyway." That's when Stephen Whitmore appeared, drawn by the commotion. But instead of diffusing the situation, his presence seemed to embolden Brad. "Stephen," Brad called out, "tell them I'm not being offensive. I'm just being honest. We can all be honest with each other, right? That's what the diversity training says, honest conversations." Whitmore's expression was hard to read. He looked at Brad, then at Damon and Vanessa, then at the crowd of employees watching with their phones out. "Perhaps everyone's had a bit too much to drink," Whitmore said carefully. "Maybe we should—" No, this is important." Brad turned back to Damon and Vanessa. "You two need to understand something. We're all trying to help you. We give you jobs, we include you in events like this, we make sure you have opportunities. The least you could do is show a little gratitude instead of sitting back here looking all offended." The crowd had gone very quiet now. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others looked interested, watching to see how this would play out. Damon stood up slowly. He was several inches taller than Brad, and in the sudden silence, his movement drew everyone's attention. "Gratitude," Damon repeated, his voice carrying across the room. "You want gratitude." "It wouldn't hurt," Brad said, but some of his confidence was wavering now. Damon looked at Brad Hutchins, looked at Stephen Whitmore, looked at the crowd of colleagues who'd spent the evening treating him and Vanessa like entertainment, looked at all of them, these people who'd never see him as anything but what they'd decided he was. Then his phone buzzed again. A text from his mother. "Maya finally asleep. She asked me why people are so mean, didn't know what to tell her." Something crystallized in Damon's chest. 6 months of careful documentation, of controlled observation, of professional distance, all of it burned away in the face of his daughter's tears. The time for watching was over. The time for truth had come. And Brad Hutchins, with his red face and his cruel grin and his son's ugly words still echoing in Damon's ears, was about to get exactly what he'd been asking for. Damon set his phone down on the table with deliberate care, the small sound somehow cutting through the ambient noise of the ballroom. When he looked up at Brad Hutchins, his expression had changed. Gone was the mild, forgettable pleasantness he'd worn like a mask for 6 months. What remained was something harder, sharper. "You want to talk about gratitude?" Damon's voice was quiet, but it carried. "Let's talk about it." Brad's grin faltered slightly. He glanced at Stephen Whitmore, seeking backup, but Whitmore's face had gone carefully neutral, the expression of a man deciding whether to intervene or let things play out. "I was just saying," Brad started. "I know what you were saying." Damon took a step closer. You were saying that Vanessa and I should be grateful. Grateful for jobs we're qualified for. Grateful for being included in events we're required to attend. Grateful for the privilege of sitting in the back while people like you treat us like we're amusing curiosities. Damon, Vanessa said quietly, touching his arm. Don't. He looked at her, saw the warning in her eyes. She was trying to protect him from the consequences of speaking truth to power. She'd spent years learning that lesson, learning when to bite your tongue and when to smile through the humiliation. But Damon wasn't who she thought he was, and he was done biting his tongue. It's okay, he told her gently. Then he turned back to Brad. You want to know what's really funny? Your son, Tyler. Great kid, I'm sure. How old is he? 8? 9? Brad's expression shifted, confusion mixing with defensive pride. 8. Why? Because today your 8-year-old son cornered my 8-year-old daughter after school. Damon's voice remained level, but everyone listening could hear the steel beneath it. And he told her that people like her don't belong at Westside, that kids like her should go to different schools. He used words that I won't repeat here, but I'm sure you can imagine them, Brad. Can you imagine what words an 8-year-old might use when he wants to make another child feel less than human? The color drained from Brad's face. I don't know what you're... He learned those words somewhere, Damon continued. 8-year-olds don't come up with sophisticated arguments about who belongs and who doesn't on their own. They learn it from parents, from overheard conversations, from the culture they're raised in. The crowd around them had gone completely silent. Phones were still recording, but no one was laughing now. My son would never... Brad tried again. Your son made my daughter cry. Damon's voice cracked slightly on the last word, and he let it. Let them hear the pain. He made her ask her grandmother why people hate her for existing. She's 8 years old, Brad. She should be worried about math homework and making friends, not whether she's allowed to exist in the same spaces as your son. Stephen Whitmore stepped forward, his corporate mediator face firmly in place. Damon, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Kids say things... Don't. Damon turned to face Whitmore directly. Don't do that. Don't minimize this. Because this isn't about kids being kids. This is about what we teach them, what we show them, the culture we create that tells them who matters and who doesn't. I think you're overreacting, Whitmore said, his voice cooling. Children have conflicts. It doesn't mean... It means everything, Vanessa said suddenly. She'd stood up, and her voice was shaking with barely controlled fury. It means that the poison we pretend doesn't exist in this company is leaking into our children's lives. It means that the casual cruelty we all ignore at work is teaching the next generation that it's acceptable to dehumanize people who don't look like them. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Ms. Hale, I understand you're upset, but making accusations about the company culture... Accusations? Vanessa laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I've worked here for 7 years, Stephen. 7 years of watching my ideas get attributed to male colleagues. 7 years of being passed over for promotions given to less qualified candidates. 7 years of events like this where I'm seated in the back and treated like a diversity checkbox. That's not fair, Whitmore said. We've invested significant resources in optics, Vanessa cut him off. In looking diverse without actually changing anything. You hire us, seat us strategically for company photos, mention us in the annual report, and then go right back to business as usual. Kyle stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation with drunken diplomacy. Guys, come on, we're all on the same team here. Let's not make this into something it's not. What is it then? Damon asked. What would you call it when a senior manager spends the evening mocking 2 colleagues for entertainment? When executives stand by and watch it happen? When an 8-year-old learns to replicate his father's prejudices so perfectly that he can weaponize them against other children? Brad's face had gone from pale to red. You need to shut your mouth right now. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but... Game? Damon's laugh was harsh. You think this is a game? Brad, I've been documenting this company's culture for 6 months. 6 months of watching, listening, recording, every dismissive comment, every overlooked contribution. Every time someone like Vanessa produced excellent work that got credit assigned elsewhere. Every complaint that was buried. Every HR report that disappeared. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the music seemed to have stopped. though Damon knew that was probably just his perception narrowing to this moment, this confrontation. Whitmore's expression had gone very cold. "What exactly are you saying, Mr. Cross?" "I'm saying that this company has a systemic problem," Damon replied. "I'm saying that you've built a culture where people like Brad feel comfortable publicly humiliating colleagues because they know there won't be consequences. I'm saying that good employees, talented people who could thrive anywhere, are leaving because they're tired of being invisible unless you need them for a photo op." "That's defamatory," Whitmore said sharply. "And if you've been recording conversations without consent—" "I've been careful to observe all relevant laws," Damon said. "But yes, I've been documenting, taking notes, collecting evidence, because I knew that if I ever spoke up, I'd need proof. I'd need something undeniable." Brad found his voice again, and it came out as a snarl. "You're nobody. You're a low-level IT guy with delusions of importance. You think anyone's going to listen to you?" "Maybe not," Damon agreed. "Or maybe they'll listen when they see the pattern, when they see how many complaints have been filed and ignored, when they see the differential treatment documented over months, when they see the emails, the meeting notes, the performance reviews that somehow get rewritten to justify predetermined outcomes." Vanessa was staring at him now with something between shock and dawning realization. "Damon, who are you?" Before he could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. "He's absolutely right." Everyone turned. A woman in her 40s stood at the edge of the crowd, her phone in her hand. Damon recognized her, Michelle Torres, a product manager who'd been with the company for 12 years. "I filed 3 separate complaints about hostile work environment last year," Michelle said, her voice steady. 3 formal reports to HR about my supervisor. You want to know what happened? Nothing. The reports disappeared. I was told I was being oversensitive. And when I pushed back, suddenly my performance reviews started including criticism that had never been mentioned before. Another voice joined in, this one male. "I watched David Kim get passed over for promotion 5 times. It was James Richardson from engineering. Every time the position went to someone less qualified. Every time HR had an explanation that boiled down to cultural fit. I've been here 9 years, another woman called out. My salary is 30% below my male colleagues doing the same job. I have the emails to prove it." The floodgates had opened. Person after person stepped forward with stories that had been suppressed, complaints that had been ignored, patterns of discrimination and retaliation that had been individually dismissed but collectively painted a damning picture. Whitmore's face had gone from cold to panicked. "This is inappropriate. This is not the time or place." "When is the time?" Michelle demanded. "When we file official complaints that disappear? When we request meetings that get canceled? When we try to go through proper channels and get told we're imagining things?" Brad looked around wildly, seeming to realize that the situation had spiraled far beyond his control. "This is insane. You're all letting some IT guy with a grudge turn you against the company, against each other." "This isn't about him," Vanessa said quietly. "This is about us. About everyone who's been told to be grateful for being allowed to exist in spaces we earned the right to occupy." Damon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and saw a message from a number he'd been expecting. "Watching the live stream. Continue." Because of course people were live streaming this. In an age where everyone's phone was a broadcast studio, a confrontation at a corporate event involving dozens of employees was inevitably going public. Damon looked back at the crowd, at the faces of people he'd worked alongside for 6 months. Some looked angry, some looked vindicated, some looked terrified of the consequences of speaking up. "I know what you're all thinking," he said. "You're thinking about your jobs, your mortgages, your families. You're thinking that speaking up means becoming a target. And you're right to be scared because that's exactly how systems like this maintain themselves, through fear of retaliation." "Damn right you should be scared," Brad spat. "Because when this is over, when the lawyers get involved, everyone who participated in this little mutiny is going to regret it." "Brad," Whitmore's voice was sharp, "stop talking." But Brad was too drunk and too angry to listen. "No, they need to hear this. You want to complain about culture, about being overlooked? Maybe if you spent less time whining and more time actually producing results, you'd get promoted. Maybe if you weren't so sensitive about every little comment, you could actually fit in here." "Fitting in,"
Vanessa repeated softly. You mean becoming like you? Learning to laugh at the jokes at other people's expense? Pretending not to notice when colleagues are treated as less than human? I mean, toughen up, Brad shot back. The real world isn't some safe space where everyone gets a trophy. If you can't handle it, maybe you should work somewhere else. Somewhere else, Michelle said.
That's always the answer, isn't it? When we point out problems, we're told to leave. The system never has to change because anyone who demands change gets pushed out. Kyle tried again to moderate, his voice pleading. Look, everyone's emotional right now. Maybe we should all take a breath, get some water. I'm not emotional, Damon said. I'm precise. I've spent 6 months being very precise about documenting what happens in this company when people think no one important is watching. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. That phrase, no one important, you've used it twice now. Have I? Who do you work for? Whitmore demanded. Who sent you here? Before Damon could answer, his phone rang. Not a text this time, but an actual call. He looked at the screen and felt something settle in his chest, the calm that comes when you've reached the point of no return. Excuse me, he said. I need to take this. He answered the phone and a familiar voice filled his ear. Damon, I'm 5 minutes out. Can you hold the room? Yes, sir, Damon replied. Good, because what I'm seeing on the live streams is exactly what we needed. The truth, unfiltered. Damon ended the call and looked around at the crowd. More people had gathered now, drawn by the commotion. The entire holiday party had essentially stopped, everyone's attention focused on this confrontation. That was my boss, Damon said simply. He'll be here shortly. Brad laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Your boss? What's he going to do, fix your computer faster? No, Damon said. He's going to do what he's been planning to do for months. He's going to hold this company accountable for the culture it's created. Whitmore was on his phone now, typing rapidly. I'm calling security. This event is over. Everyone needs to leave. Nobody's leaving, Michelle said firmly. We've been silent too long. If Damon has evidence, we want to hear it.
Huh? I want to hear it too,
another voice called out. Then another. Then a dozen more. Vanessa touched Damon's arm again, and when he looked at her, her eyes were full of questions. Damon, what's happening? Who are you? I'm exactly who I said I was, he told her. A father who loves his daughter. Someone tired of watching good people get ground down by systems designed to protect the powerful. But I'm also... He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm also someone who has the resources to do something about it. Before Vanessa could ask what that meant, the ballroom doors opened. The noise level, which had been building steadily, dropped to near silence. A man in his 60s entered, flanked by 2 people in business attire carrying briefcases. He was distinguished, silver-haired, wearing a suit that made everyone else's look cheap by comparison. He moved with the quiet authority of someone who'd never had to raise his voice to be heard. Damon watched the color drain from Stephen Whitmore's face as recognition set in. Mr. Carrington, Whitmore stammered. I didn't know we weren't expecting... Jonathan Carrington, founder and CEO of Carrington Equity Partners, the investment firm that owned controlling interest in Sinclair Corporation, stopped in the center of the ballroom. His eyes swept the room, taking in the crowd, the phones, the tension in the air. Clearly, Carrington said dryly, because if you'd known I was coming, I suspect this event would have looked very different. He turned to Damon, and his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Damon, report. Damon straightened, his 6 months of careful performance falling away like a shed skin. Sir, as discussed, I've completed the cultural assessment. The documentation has been uploaded to the secure server. What you're witnessing now is the spontaneous confirmation of the patterns we identified. The crowd's murmur grew louder as understanding rippled through them. Vanessa's hand tightened on Damon's arm. Wait, she said. You work for Carrington Equity? He doesn't work for me, Carrington corrected. He is me. Or rather, he's the eyes and ears I needed inside a company that's been hemorrhaging talent and facing increasing legal exposure. Brad's face had gone from red to purple. You planted a spy. You can't do that. That's illegal. It's perfectly legal, one of Carrington's lawyers said smoothly. An investment firm has every right to conduct internal assessments of companies in its portfolio. especially when those companies are facing potential liability that could affect shareholder value. Whitmore found his voice, though it shook slightly. Mr. Carrington, I assure you, whatever you've heard tonight is a gross exaggeration. Some disgruntled employees making accusations. I've heard multiple employees corroborating patterns of discrimination, retaliation, and hostile work environment, Carrington interrupted. I've watched your senior management publicly humiliate staff members, and I've reviewed 6 months of documentation that confirms this isn't aberrant behavior. It's systemic culture. He turned to address the full crowd. For those who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Carrington. My firm owns 41% of Sinclair Corporation, which means when this company fails to live up to its obligations, to its employees, to its stakeholders, to basic standards of human decency, that failure reflects on me. The ballroom was dead silent now. Even Brad had shut up, seemingly in shock. 3 years ago, Carrington continued, we started noticing concerning patterns in Sinclair's performance metrics. High turnover among talented employees, increasing HR complaints, exit interviews that painted a troubling picture. When we raised these concerns with leadership, we were assured everything was being handled appropriately. Whitmore's face had gone gray. We implemented diversity training, updated our policies. You implemented window dressing, Carrington said flatly. The numbers didn't improve. The culture didn't change. So I made a decision. I sent someone I trust to see the truth for himself. Someone who could operate at a level where the real culture reveals itself. He looked at Damon with something that might have been respect. Damon Cross, though that's not his full name, is uniquely qualified for this assignment. He has degrees in computer science and organizational psychology. He's worked in actual IT roles before. And he has the emotional intelligence to observe patterns that data alone can't capture. Vanessa was staring at Damon now, her expression a complicated mix of betrayal and understanding. You've been lying to us for 6 months. I've been observing, Damon corrected gently. Everything I told you about myself was true. I have a daughter named Maya. I am a single father. I do care about the work. The only thing I didn't tell you was who I was working for and why I was really here. That's not a small omission, Vanessa said, her voice tight. No, Damon agreed. It's not. And I'm sorry for the deception. But Vanessa, everything you told me tonight, everything you've experienced, that's real. And it needed to be documented by someone they wouldn't perform for. Michelle stepped forward. So all those conversations we had about the culture, about the problems, you were gathering evidence? Yes, Damon said, but I was also listening, really listening, to people who'd been told their experiences didn't matter, whose complaints had been buried, who'd learned not to speak up because speaking up meant becoming a target. And now what? James Richardson asked. You've got your evidence. What happens to us? Do we all get fired for speaking out tonight? Carrington's expression hardened. Let me be absolutely clear. There will be no retaliation against anyone who spoke up tonight. Anyone who raised concerns, shared experiences, or participated in this conversation is protected. And if anyone attempts to retaliate, if performance reviews suddenly become negative, if promotions are denied, if any adverse action is taken, there will be immediate consequences. You can't guarantee that, Brad said, finding his voice again. Once you leave, once the lawyers are gone, it'll be business as usual. These people will be marked. You're right, Carrington said. I can't guarantee it, which is why there are going to be immediate structural changes, starting with leadership. Whitmore's face went white. Mr. Carrington, if you're suggesting, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you. Effective immediately, you're on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Your direct reports will be interviewed. Every complaint filed during your tenure will be reopened and reviewed by an independent third party. And if the investigation confirms what I suspect, your employment with Sinclair Corporation will be terminated. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. This was really happening. The CEO was being forced out live in front of everyone. Brad made a desperate play. This is a witch hunt. You're destroying careers based on the word of people with axes to grind. What about due process? What about Maya Cross? Carrington's voice cut through Brad's protests like a knife. What about an 8-year-old child who cried to her grandmother because your son bullied her with racist language he learned from the culture you've helped create? Brad's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. I have children too, Mr. Hutchins, Carrington continued. Grandchildren.
And I'll be damned if I let any organization I'm associated with create an environment where children learn to dehumanize each other. So yes, we're going to examine your role here very carefully. We're going to look at your management style, your track record, the culture you've cultivated in your division. You can't fire me for what my kid said, Brad protested weakly. No, Carrington agreed. But I can fire you for creating a hostile work environment, for harassment, for conduct unbecoming. And based on what I witnessed tonight alone, never mind the 6 months of documentation Damon compiled, I have ample cause. Damon watched Brad's face cycle through emotions: disbelief, anger, fear, and finally, a kind of desperate calculation. He was trying to figure out how to salvage this, how to spin it, how to survive. But there was no spinning this, not with hundreds of witnesses and live streams broadcasting to who knew how many people. One of Carrington's associates stepped forward with a tablet. Sir, we're trending on multiple platforms. The hashtag is already being used by current and former employees sharing their experiences. Carrington nodded. Good. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. He turned back to the assembled crowd. Here's what happens next. Tomorrow morning, an independent investigation team will begin interviews. Anyone who wants to share their experience will have the opportunity to do so, with full confidentiality and protection from retaliation. We'll review policies, procedures, and personnel, and we'll make changes, real changes, not cosmetic ones. And us? Michelle asked. The people who spoke up tonight? You'll have opportunities, Carrington said. Real ones, based on merit. Because here's what I've learned over 40 years in business. Companies that suppress talent don't thrive. Organizations that protect bullies at the expense of brilliant people don't innovate. And cultures built on fear and exclusion eventually collapse under their own weight. He looked around the ballroom, meeting eyes, letting the weight of his words sink in. Some of you will choose to leave anyway, and I understand that. Trust, once broken, is hard to repair. But for those who stay, I promise you this: the culture that made tonight necessary will not survive. We're burning it down and building something better. Vanessa had been silent through all of this, processing. Now she turned to Damon. Why didn't you tell me? When we were talking, when I was sharing everything about my experiences, why not tell me the truth? Damon met her eyes. Because I needed to see the real culture. If people knew who I was, they'd perform. They'd be on their best behavior. The racism, the exclusion, the casual cruelty, it only happens when people think no one important is watching. So you let me think you were powerless, Vanessa said. Let me comfort you, advise you, worry about you getting hurt for speaking up, while all along you had all the power in the room. Not all the power, Damon said quietly. You had power too, Vanessa. The power of truth, of lived experience, of refusing to be silenced even when staying silent would have been safer. I just had the resources to make sure people listened. Vanessa looked at him for a long moment, emotions warring across her face. Then she turned to Carrington. I want to file a formal complaint. 7 years worth. Every overlooked contribution, every stolen idea, every time I was told I was being oversensitive when I raised concerns about harassment. You'll have that opportunity, Carrington promised, along with everyone else. And I want it on record, Vanessa continued, her voice strengthening, that this isn't just about individual bad actors. It's about systems. About how companies can espouse values they don't practice. About how easy it is to perform inclusion while perpetuating exclusion. Noted, Carrington said, and agreed. The party had fully dissolved now into smaller conversations, people clustering together to process what had happened. Some were crying, some were angry. Some looked relieved, as if a weight they'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted. Damon's phone buzzed again. His mother. Maya's sleeping better. Still wants you home, love you, baby. He typed back. Almost done. Tell her Daddy made sure Tyler Hutchins' father understands that words have consequences. Home soon. When he looked up, Vanessa was still standing there, but something in her posture had shifted. The defensive armor she'd worn all evening had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. My daughter Lily, she said quietly. She's 9. And every day I've had to model strength for her. Had to show her that you don't let people make you small, but inside I've been terrified. Terrified that I'm teaching her to fight battles she'll never win. That I'm setting her up for a lifetime of exhausting herself against systems designed to exclude her. That's why this matters, Damon said. Not just the investigation or the firings or the policy changes, but showing our daughters that sometimes the systems do change. Sometimes speaking truth does matter. Sometimes the powerful actually face consequences. Vanessa smiled, but it was complicated, layered with years of disappointment. I want to believe that, but I've seen too many reforms that amounted to nothing, too many promises that disappeared once the spotlight moved on. Then stay, Damon said. Hold us accountable. Make sure the changes are real and lasting. Because you're right. Without people like you pushing, demanding, refusing to let it slide back to business as usual, none of this will stick. Before Vanessa could respond, Brad Hutchins made one final, desperate move. He pulled out his phone and made a call, his voice carrying across the now quiet ballroom. Yeah, it's me. I need a lawyer now. They're trying to fire me, and I'm not going down without a fight. Carrington didn't even look at him. You have that right, Mr. Hutchins, but I suggest you also have a conversation with your son about where he learned the words he used to bully Maya Cross, because that's a problem that won't be solved by lawyers. The ballroom doors opened again, and a security team entered. Not aggressive, just present. A reminder that the party was over, and what came next would happen in more formal settings. Ladies and gentlemen, Carrington announced, this event is concluded. You're all free to leave. Those who wish to participate in the investigation will receive information tomorrow about how to do so confidentially. For now, go home, be with your families. Process what happened here. People began to move toward the exits, slowly at first, then in a steady stream, but many stopped by table 17 on their way out, offering quiet words to Damon and Vanessa. Thank you for speaking up, Michelle said, gripping Damon's hand. We've got your back, James Richardson told Vanessa. One by one, people who'd been silent for years expressed solidarity, shared quick stories, promised to tell the truth when the investigators came. When the room had mostly cleared, only Carrington, his team, Damon, Vanessa, a shell-shocked Whitmore, and a furious Brad remained. Carrington turned to Whitmore. You'll hear from our attorneys in the morning. In the meantime, HR will handle the logistics of your administrative leave. Whitmore nodded mutely, his earlier confidence completely shattered. To Brad, Carrington said simply, You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You can't, Brad started. I can, and I did. You'll receive severance according to your contract, minus any damages we determine you're liable for. And Mr. Hutchins, use some of that severance for family therapy. Your son needs better guidance than he's clearly been getting. Brad's face contorted with rage, but with security present and his position untenable, he had no choice but to leave. As he passed Damon, he hissed, This isn't over. Yes, Damon said quietly. It is. When Brad was gone, Carrington turned to Damon. Well done. The documentation you provided was comprehensive, but seeing the culture in action, that was invaluable. Thank you, sir. Take the rest of the week. Be with your daughter. Help her process what happened with the Hutchins boy. Carrington's expression softened. And Damon? I'm sorry she got hurt. That was never supposed to happen. No, Damon agreed. But it did happen, which proves why this work matters. Carrington nodded and left with his team, leaving Damon and Vanessa alone in the nearly empty ballroom. The chandeliers still glittered. The ice sculptures were melting slightly. The remnants of the party remained scattered across tables. So, Vanessa said after a long silence, Damon Cross. Who are you really? Damon Cross Carrington, he said. Jonathan's nephew. I grew up watching him build companies, watching him navigate corporate culture. When he asked me to help with this, I thought it would be straightforward. Document the problems, recommend solutions, move on. But I didn't expect it to feel so personal. Didn't expect to care about the people I was observing. Didn't expect to meet someone like you. Vanessa looked away. Don't do that. Do what? Pretend this was real, she said, her voice tight. The connection, the conversations, the moment when I thought I'd finally met someone who understood. It was all part of your investigation. No. Damon moved closer. The investigation was about the company. What happened between us, that was real, Vanessa. Every word I said to you about Maya, about being a single parent, about the exhaustion of navigating these spaces, all of that was true. But you lied about who you were. I omitted my last name and my connection to Carrington. Everything else? That was me. The real me. Vanessa turned back to face him, tears in her eyes. How am I supposed to trust that? How am I supposed to know what was real and what was performance? I don't know, Damon admitted. Maybe you can't. Maybe I broke something tonight that can't be repaired. But Vanessa, you need to know. Watching you survive in that culture with your dignity intact, watching you refuse to let them make you small, watching you be brilliant despite every obstacle they put in your way, that wasn't data collection. That was admiration. Vanessa closed her eyes and tears slid down her cheeks. I need to go. I need to get home to Lily and process all of this. Okay, Damon said softly. But Vanessa, when the investigators come, tell them everything. Hold nothing back. Make them understand what it's been like. Because your truth matters. It always mattered. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and walked toward the exit. At the door, she paused and looked back. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I'm glad Maya has a father who fights for her, even if his methods are complicated. Then she was gone, leaving Damon alone in the wreckage of the evening. He pulled out his phone and called his mother. Mama, I'm coming home. The drive home felt longer than usual, though the streets were nearly empty at this hour. Damon's hands gripped the steering wheel with mechanical precision while his mind replayed the evening in fragments. Brad's cruel grin, Vanessa's tears, the moment his daughter's voice had cracked over the phone. The city lights blurred past his windows, and somewhere between the corporate district and his neighborhood, the adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation began to fade, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion. His mother was waiting on the porch when he pulled into the driveway, her cardigan wrapped tight against the December cold. She stood as he climbed out of the car, and without a word pulled him into a hug that reminded him he was still someone's child, no matter how powerful his uncle was or how cleanly he'd dismantled Brad Hutchins' career. She okay? Damon asked against his mother's shoulder. Sleeping now, his mother said. But baby, it was bad. Real bad. She cried for almost an hour before she could even tell me what happened. Damon pulled back, feeling something crack in his chest. I should have been here. You were doing what needed doing, his mother said firmly. Don't you carry that guilt. You hear me? Maya knows her daddy loves her, but that boy, that Tyler, her voice hardened. That child said things that came straight from his father's mouth. I know hate when I hear it, and that was hate. His father's not going to be a problem anymore, Damon said quietly. His mother studied his face in the porch light. What'd you do? What I came here to do. What Uncle Jonathan sent me to do 6 months ago. Damon rubbed his face, suddenly feeling every minute of those 6 months. I exposed it, all of it, and Brad Hutchins got fired in front of 200 people. His mother's eyes widened. Fired? Tonight? Effective immediately. Damon followed her inside, where the house was warm and smelled faintly of the cocoa his mother must have made for Maya. Uncle Jonathan showed up, made it official. Brad's done, Whitmore's on leave, and the whole company's about to get turned inside out. And that woman you mentioned. Vanessa? Damon sank onto the couch, his tuxedo suddenly feeling like a costume he couldn't wait to shed. She's angry, hurt, feels like I used her. Did you? I documented her experiences, yeah, but Mama... He looked up at her. Everything I said to her was true. About Maya, about being tired, about recognizing the same exhaustion in her that I see in myself. That wasn't part of the investigation. That was just real. His mother sat beside him, her hand covering his. Sometimes the hardest part of doing the right thing is the people who get hurt along the way, even when you're trying to protect them. She told me everything tonight, Damon said. 7 years of being overlooked, dismissed, having her work stolen. And I sat there knowing I had the power to change it, knowing who I really was, and I let her think I was just another powerless person trying to survive. You think she would have been honest if she knew you were Jonathan Carrington's nephew? If she knew you had that kind of power? Damon was quiet for a moment. No, she would have been careful, strategic. She wouldn't have let me see the real cost of that culture. Then you did what you had to do, his mother said. Now you give her time to understand that. And maybe, if she's willing, you find a way to make it right. Damon nodded, though he wasn't sure making it right was possible. He stood and moved toward the hallway. I need to see Maya. She's in her room. I left the nightlight on. He found his daughter curled under her favorite blanket, the one with stars that glowed in the dark. Her face was peaceful in sleep, but he could see the tear tracks on her cheeks, the way her hand clutched her stuffed elephant like a lifeline. Damon sat carefully on the edge of her bed and brushed a hand over her hair. Maya's eyes fluttered open. Daddy? Hey, baby girl, he said softly. I'm home. She sat up and threw her arms around his neck, holding on with the fierce intensity of a child who'd been scared. You said you'd make it better. I did, I promise. Damon held her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Tyler's daddy isn't going to be able to hurt people anymore, and Tyler's going to learn that the words he used were wrong. But why did he say them? Maya's voice was muffled against his shoulder. Why did he think those things about me? Damon pulled back so he could look at her face. Because some people teach their children to be afraid of anyone different from them, and fear makes people cruel. But Maya, that's not about you, that's about them. You are brilliant and kind and exactly who you're supposed to be. Ms. Johnson says everyone's equal, Maya said. She says it doesn't matter what we look like. Ms. Johnson's right, but baby, not everyone believes that yet. Some people still think that being different means being less. And until we teach them better, we have to be strong enough to know our own worth. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she asked, Did you get in trouble for making Tyler's daddy lose his job? No, sweetheart. Tyler's daddy lost his job because of choices he made. Because he was mean to people at work, the same way Tyler was mean to you. And when you're mean to people, especially when you're supposed to be leading them, there are consequences. Good, Maya said with the fierce certainty of 8-year-old justice. He should have consequences. Damon smiled despite everything. That's my girl. Now, you need to sleep. School tomorrow. Will Tyler be there? Probably. But if he bothers you again, you tell Miss Johnson immediately, and then you call me. Promise? Promise? Maya settled back under her blanket. Daddy? I'm glad you're my daddy. The simple statement hit Damon harder than Brad's insults or Vanessa's anger had. I'm glad you're my daughter, Maya, more than anything in the world. He stayed until she fell back asleep, then made his way to his own room. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, he lay in the darkness, watching his phone light up with notifications. The story had spread beyond the live streams. News outlets were picking it up. Former Sinclair employees were coming forward with their own stories on social media. The hashtag Carrington's associate had mentioned was trending nationwide. At 2 a.m, his phone rang. Uncle Jonathan. You still awake? His uncle asked without preamble. Yeah. Good. We need to talk about next steps. The board's calling an emergency meeting for Monday. They want a full report on your findings. Damon sat up, suddenly alert. I can have it ready. I know you can, but Damon, we need to talk about the personal cost here. That woman, Vanessa, you care about her. It wasn't a question. Jonathan Carrington hadn't built an empire by being oblivious to human dynamics. I documented her experiences, Damon said carefully. Along with everyone else's. That's not what I asked. Damon was silent for a long moment. She's remarkable. Brilliant, resilient, honest in ways that are rare. And yeah, I care about her, which is why she has every right to be angry with me. You going to let that anger be the end of it? I don't know if I have a choice, Uncle Jonathan. Trust isn't something you can force. No, his uncle agreed. But you can earn it back, if you're willing to do the work. Question is, are you? Damon thought about Vanessa's face when she'd realized who he was. The betrayal in her eyes. The way she'd asked how she was supposed to know what was real. I don't know if she'll give me the chance, he said. Then you make the chance. You show up. You're honest. You let her see that the man she talked to at that table was the real you, just with a more complicated last name than she knew. Jonathan paused. But you do it after she's had time to process. After the investigation, after the changes start happening. after she can see that this wasn't just about you getting what you needed. When did you become a relationship counselor? Jonathan laughed. Son, I've been married 42 years. You think I don't know about earning back trust? Your aunt didn't speak to me for 3 months after I missed our anniversary for a business deal. I learned. What'd you do? Showed up every day, didn't make excuses, proved through actions that she mattered more than the deal. Eventually, she believed me. He paused. Give Vanessa the same courtesy. Show her through actions, not words. They talked for another 20 minutes about the investigation, the board meeting, the structural changes that would need to happen. When Damon finally hung up, exhaustion was pulling at him, but his mind kept circling back to Vanessa. The weekend passed in a blur. Saturday, Damon took Maya to the park, watching her play with fierce determination, as if she could outrun the memory of Tyler's words through sheer physical activity. Sunday, they stayed home, baking cookies and watching movies, creating a bubble of normalcy that both of them needed. But Monday came inevitably, bringing with it the first wave of consequences. Damon returned to Sinclair Corporation not as the quiet IT guy, but as himself. Damon Cross Carrington, organizational consultant for Carrington Equity Partners. He wore a different suit, carried himself differently, and the reaction from employees who'd barely noticed him before was immediate and uncomfortable. People stared, whispered. A few brave souls approached to thank him. Others avoided eye contact entirely, perhaps worried about what he'd documented about them. Michelle Torres caught him in the hallway outside the executive offices. Damon, or should I call you Mr. Carrington now? Damon's fine, he said. The investigators want to talk to me this afternoon, Michelle said, her hands twisted together nervously. I'm terrified. What if nothing changes? What if I make everything worse by talking? Michelle, look at me. Damon waited until she met his eyes. The only way nothing changes is if people stay silent. Your story matters.
Your experience matters, and I promise you there will be no retaliation. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Because I'll be watching. Because my uncle will be watching. Because we're changing the structure so that retaliation becomes impossible. He softened his voice. I know trust is hard right now. But you've already been brave enough to speak up once. Don't stop now. Michelle nodded shakily. Okay, I'll tell them everything. As she walked away, Damon caught sight of Vanessa across the lobby. She was talking with 2 other women from marketing, her posture defensive, her expression guarded. When she noticed him looking, she said something to her colleagues and headed for the elevator. Damon didn't follow. Not yet. Jonathan was right. She needed time. The board meeting that afternoon was exactly as brutal as expected. Damon presented his findings in clinical detail, backing up every observation with documentation. The pattern was undeniable. Over 6 months, he'd documented 47 instances of discriminatory behavior, 18 cases where complaints had been buried or ignored, and a culture of retaliation that had driven out at least 12 talented employees in the past 2 years alone. The board members listened in grim silence. When Damon finished, the chairman, a woman in her 60s named Patricia Chen, spoke first. This is worse than we thought. It's exactly what people have been trying to tell you for years, Damon said bluntly. The only difference is now you can't ignore it. One of the other board members, a man named Robert Sterling, bristled. That's unfair. We implemented diversity initiatives. You implemented performance theater, Damon interrupted. Training that nobody took seriously, policies that weren't enforced, committees that had no real power. Meanwhile, the actual culture, the daily experience of working here, got worse. So what do you recommend? Patricia asked. Damon pulled up his next slide. Complete restructuring of HR. Independent oversight with real authority. Transparent complaint processes with mandatory investigations. Regular third-party audits. And most importantly, consequences that actually stick. Not warnings, not slaps on the wrist. Real accountability. That's going to be expensive, Sterling said. You know what's more expensive? Jonathan Carrington spoke up from his seat at the table. Lawsuits. The kind that are already being prepared by former employees who kept documentation of their own. The kind that will make headlines and destroy shareholder value. We can do this the right way now, or we can pay exponentially more later while our reputation burns. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. The changes would be implemented immediately.
Over the next 2 weeks, Sinclair Corporation transformed. Stephen Whitmore was officially terminated after the investigation confirmed a pattern of overlooking and enabling discriminatory behavior. 3 other executives were forced out. The entire HR department was restructured, with new leadership brought in from outside. Damon watched it unfold from his position as consultant, documenting the changes as thoroughly as he'd documented the problems. But he also watched Vanessa from a distance, respecting her space while noting that she'd thrown herself into the investigation with fierce determination. She testified for 3 hours, presenting 7 years of documentation she'd kept in a folder on her personal computer, emails where her ideas were attributed to others, performance reviews that contradicted her actual results, instances where she'd been excluded from meetings critical to her projects. The investigator's report, when it came out, vindicated everything she'd said. More than that, it identified systemic patterns that had affected dozens of other employees, particularly women and people of color. Vanessa was offered a promotion. Senior Director of Marketing Strategy, reporting directly to the new VP, a 40% salary increase. An apology from the board. Damon heard about it through the official channels, but he didn't reach out, not yet. 3 weeks after this holiday party, as January settled into its cold rhythm, Damon was working late in his temporary office when there was a knock on the door. He looked up to find Vanessa standing there, still in her coat, her expression unreadable. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Damon stood, his heart suddenly racing. "Come in." She stepped inside but didn't sit. "I heard you're leaving, going back to whatever you usually do for your uncle." "The active phase of the investigation is over," Damon confirmed. "There'll be follow-up, but yeah, I'm not needed here day to day anymore." Vanessa nodded, looking around the office. "I wanted to thank you, before you left, for what you did." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do, because despite the deception, despite the complicated ethics of how you went about it, you changed things, real things. I got a promotion I'd been passed over for 3 times. Michelle's being transferred to a new division where she won't have to see her old supervisor. James got the salary adjustment he'd been requesting for 2 years. She finally looked at him directly. "People's lives are actually better because of what you did." "What we did?" Damon corrected gently. "I just documented it. You and Michelle and everyone else who spoke up, you're the ones who had the courage to tell the truth when it mattered." Still, Vanessa moved closer, her hands in her coat pockets. "I've been angry with you for 3 weeks. Really angry. I kept thinking about all the conversations we had, wondering what was real and what was calculation." "Vanessa, let me finish." She held up a hand. "I was angry, but I've also been watching how you handled the investigation, how you protected people who testified, how you pushed for real changes instead of easy cosmetic ones. And I realized something." "What?" "That the man I talked to at that table, the one who listened, who understood about being exhausted, who talked about his daughter with such obvious love, he was real. The deception was about your last name and your position. But everything else? That was you." Damon felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. "It was. All of it." "I know." Vanessa pulled her hands from her pockets. "I also know that Maya's okay. I asked around. Heard that Tyler Hutchins transferred to a different school, that Brad's wife left him, that their whole family's in therapy." "You investigated my personal life?" "I asked a few questions," Vanessa said with the ghost of a smile. "Figured turnabout was fair play." Despite everything, Damon laughed. "Fair enough." "I also heard," Vanessa continued, her tone shifting, "that you turned down a bonus from your uncle, that you told him any money should go to the employees who'd suffered under the old culture." I didn't do this for money." "I know, that's my point." Vanessa took another step closer. "You did this because you actually care, because your daughter got hurt, and you decided to make sure no other kid had to experience what she did. Because you saw people being ground down and you had the resources to stop it, so you did." Vanessa, where are you going with this?" She met his eyes steadily. "I'm going toward trusting you again. Slowly, carefully. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying, because Lily asked about you." Damon's eyebrows rose. "Lily? How does she—" "I told her about the party,
about what happened, about how one person stood up and changed things. Age-appropriate version, obviously, and she said she wanted to meet the man who made sure her mama got treated fairly. Vanessa's voice softened. She's never asked to meet anyone I work with before. I'd like that, Damon said quietly. I'd like to meet her, if you're comfortable with it. Maybe coffee first, Vanessa said. Just us. A real conversation where we both know who we're talking to. I'd like that even more. They stood there for a moment in the quiet office, the weight of the past weeks hanging between them, but no longer crushing. I have one condition, Vanessa said. Name it. Complete honesty. No omissions, no strategic withholding. If we're going to try this, whatever this is, I need to know that what I see is what I get. You have my word, Damon said. No more secrets. Vanessa nodded slowly. Okay then, coffee, this weekend? This weekend, Damon agreed. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Damon? For what it's worth, I'm glad Maya has you as her father. And I'm glad you were angry enough about what happened to her to do something about it. That kind of anger, the kind that drives change instead of destruction, that's rare. So is the kind of strength you showed, Damon said. Surviving in that culture with your integrity intact, refusing to let them make you bitter or cruel. That's not just rare, Vanessa. That's extraordinary. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes, and Damon felt something shift in his chest. Not the crack of breaking, but the stretch of expansion, making room for possibility. After she left, Damon sat back down at his desk and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through the messages that had accumulated over the past weeks. Former Sinclair employees thanking him, journalists requesting interviews, headhunters trying to recruit him. But the message he stopped on was from Maya, sent from his mother's phone that afternoon. Daddy, I got an A on my science project. Ms. Johnson said it was the best in the class. Tyler wasn't there today. I hope he's okay, even though he was mean. Damon typed back, so proud of you, baby girl. And it's good that you hope he's okay. That's what being kind looks like even when someone hurt you. Maya's response came quickly. Grandma says being kind doesn't mean being weak. Grandma's right, Damon wrote. Being kind when you have the power to be cruel is the strongest thing you can do. He thought about that as he finished his work for the day. Thought about Vanessa choosing to trust him again despite her anger. Thought about Maya hoping Tyler was okay despite what he'd done. Thought about all the employees who'd spoken up knowing there could be consequences. Strength wasn't about dominance or control. It was about choosing integrity when expedience would be easier. About demanding change when silence would be safer. About extending grace while still holding people accountable. That night, driving home through the winter darkness, Damon allowed himself to hope. Hope that the changes at Sinclair would last. Hope that Vanessa's willingness to try again would grow into something real. Hope that Maya would grow up in a world slightly better than the one he'd inherited. His phone rang as he pulled into his driveway. Uncle Jonathan. How'd it go with the board? Damon asked. They approved everything. Full restructuring, independent oversight, the works. Jonathan paused. You did good work, nephew. Real good work. It's not over, Damon said. Changing policy is one thing. Changing culture takes years. True? Which is why I want you to stay involved. Not full-time, but quarterly check-ins. Keep them honest. I can do that. And Damon? I heard Vanessa Hale stopped by your office today. Damon should have known his uncle had eyes everywhere. You keeping tabs on me? Always so. You two going to work it out? Maybe. If I don't screw it up. Jonathan laughed. Just remember what I told you. Show up. Be honest. Prove through actions that she can trust you. Yes, sir. Good. Now go see your daughter. She texted me about her science project. Wouldn't stop talking about it. Damon smiled. She texted you? Kid's got my private number. What can I say? She's brilliant. Wonder where she gets it. After they hung up, Damon sat in his car for a moment, looking at his house. Through the front window, he could see his mother and Maya in the kitchen, probably finishing dinner. His daughter's laughter carried faintly through the walls, bright and unguarded. This, Damon thought, this was what mattered. Not the corporate restructuring or the policy changes or even the satisfaction of watching Brad Hutchins face consequences. What mattered was that Maya could laugh again without the weight of Tyler's words crushing her spirit. What mattered was that employees like Vanessa could walk into work without armor,
without calculating every interaction for potential harm. He climbed out of the car and headed inside, where Maya met him at the door with her science project, a model of the solar system that she'd constructed with meticulous care. "Look, Daddy, Venus is my favorite because it's named after a powerful woman." Damon knelt down to examine her work, his heart full. "It's perfect, baby. Just like you. Ms. Johnson said I should enter it in the district competition." "Then we'll enter it in the district competition," Damon said. "And we'll make sure everyone knows that Maya Cross is a force to be reckoned with." His mother appeared in the doorway, smiling. "Dinner's ready, and baby, there's someone on the phone for you. Says her name is Vanessa." Damon's heart jumped. He took the phone his mother offered. "Vanessa? Hi. I know I just saw you, but I was thinking—" She paused. "What if we did coffee sooner, like tomorrow? I know it's short notice, but Lily's with my sister tomorrow evening, and I just thought—" "Tomorrow's perfect," Damon said, unable to keep the smile out of his voice. "Okay. Good. There's a place called Morrison's near the park. 7 o'clock? I'll be there." After he hung up, his mother gave him a knowing look. "That the woman from your work thing?" "Yeah. She sounds nice. Nervous, but nice." "She is nice, Mama. Really nice." His mother patted his cheek. "Then don't mess it up. Now come eat before this food gets cold." At dinner, Maya peppered him with questions about the solar system, about space travel, about whether there might be life on other planets. Damon answered as best he could, marveling at his daughter's endless curiosity, her refusal to let one cruel boy diminish her enthusiasm for learning. Later, after Maya was asleep and his mother had gone to her own room, Damon stood in his daughter's doorway, watching her breathe in the soft glow of her star-patterned nightlight. She'd asked for that nightlight after the incident with Tyler, saying she needed to remember that even in darkness, there was light. Smart kid. Smarter than he'd been at her age. Maybe smarter than he was now. His phone buzzed with a final message for the day. From Vanessa. "Thank you for giving me space to be angry, and thank you for being worth giving a second chance." Damon typed back, "Thank you for being brave enough to give one. See you tomorrow." He set his phone aside and took one last look at his sleeping daughter. Tomorrow, he'd have coffee with a woman who made him want to be better. Next week, he'd check in on the changes at Sinclair, making sure the reforms held. Next month, he'd attend Maya's district science competition and cheer louder than any other parent there. But tonight, standing in the doorway of his daughter's room, Damon Cross-Carrington allowed himself a moment of simple gratitude. Gratitude that he'd had the resources to create change. Gratitude that people like Vanessa existed, brilliant and resilient enough to survive systems designed to break them. Gratitude that his daughter was learning, through his actions, that standing up for what's right mattered more than standing back in safety. The work wasn't finished. Culture change never really was. But for the first time in 6 months, Damon felt like he could breathe. Like the weight he'd been carrying, the weight of secrets and documentation and calculated distance, had finally lifted, leaving behind something lighter. Something that felt almost like hope. Morrison's Coffee House was the kind of place that had been around long enough to have character. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture that somehow worked together, and the rich smell of fresh ground beans that hit you the moment you walked through the door. Damon arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee he didn't really want, and chose a table near the window where he could watch the street. The evening traffic moved past in lazy streams, headlights cutting through the early darkness of January. He checked his phone reflexively, saw a message from his mother, "Good luck tonight. Be yourself," and smiled despite his nerves. He'd faced down hostile executives, documented institutional racism, and stood in front of a board of directors to dismantle a toxic culture. But sitting here waiting for Vanessa felt more intimidating than all of that combined. She arrived exactly at 7, pausing in the doorway to scan the room. When her eyes found him, something flickered across her face. Uncertainty, maybe, or the last remnants of the anger she'd carried for weeks. She'd changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in its usual professional style. She looked younger this way, less armored. Damon stood as she approached. "Hi." "Hi." Vanessa set her bag on the chair across from him. "I need to order. Want anything?" "I'm good, thanks." He watched her move to the counter, observing the way she spoke to the barista with the same courtesy she'd shown everyone, even when they didn't deserve it. It was one of the things he'd noticed during his 6 months undercover. Vanessa never took her frustrations out on people who had less power than she did. She saved her edge for those who'd earned it. When she returned with her latte, she sat down carefully, wrapping her hands around the cup like she needed something to hold on to. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't hostile, but it wasn't comfortable either. It was the silence of two people trying to figure out where to start. "So," Vanessa finally said, "complete honesty. That was the deal." "That was the deal," Damon agreed. "Then I'll start." She met his eyes. "I've spent the last 3 weeks being angry with you. Really, deeply angry. Not just about the deception, but about what it represented. About how it felt to finally connect with someone who seemed to understand, only to find out that understanding was part of an investigation." "Vanessa, let me finish." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I was angry, but I've also been thinking about what you said at the party. About how you needed to see the real culture, the one that only exists when people think no one important is watching. And the thing is, you were right. If I'd known who you were, I would have been different, more careful, more strategic. I wouldn't have told you the truth about what those 7 years cost me." "I hated that," Damon said quietly. "Sitting there, listening to you describe being ground down day after day, knowing I had the power to change it, but couldn't reveal that without compromising the investigation." "I believe you." Vanessa took a sip of her latte. "But here's what I need to know. When you talked about Maya, about being exhausted, about recognizing something in me, was any of that real? Or was it all just really good method acting?" Damon leaned forward, his hands flat on the table between them. "Every word about Maya was real. Every word about being tired of performing, about wanting my daughter to grow up in a better world, that was me, Vanessa. The only thing that wasn't real was my last name and my job title. Everything else? That was the most honest I've been with anyone in years." "Why?" Vanessa challenged. "Why be honest with me when honesty wasn't part of the job?" "Because you made it impossible not to be." Damon's voice roughened. "Because sitting there with you, watching you survive with your dignity intact despite everything they did to diminish you, I couldn't keep the professional distance I was supposed to maintain. You got under my skin, Vanessa. You made me care." She studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for deception. "I want to believe that." "Then believe it. Ask me anything. No filters, no strategic omissions, just truth." Vanessa set down her cup. "Okay. Did you document our conversations? The personal ones, about our daughters and being single parents?" "No," Damon said immediately. "I documented workplace interactions, professional dynamics, things I observed in meetings and public spaces. But our conversations at that table? Those were off the record. Those were just us." "Did your uncle know about me specifically?" "He knew there was a marketing manager who was being systematically overlooked despite strong performance. He knew I'd identified you as someone whose testimony would be valuable, but the personal connection, that wasn't in any report. Until the party, until I couldn't hide it anymore," Damon admitted. "When Brad started harassing you, when I saw what it was doing to you, Uncle Jonathan knew then. He could see it, and afterward, he asked me directly if I cared about you." "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That you were remarkable. That I cared. And that you had every right to be angry with me for the deception." Vanessa was quiet, processing. Outside the window, a couple walked past holding hands, their laughter muffled by the glass. Damon watched Vanessa watch them, saw something wistful cross her face. "I haven't dated anyone in 3 years," she said suddenly. "After my ex left, I told myself it was about protecting Lily, about not bringing unstable relationships into her life. But really, I think I was just scared. Scared of trusting someone and getting hurt again." "That's not irrational," Damon said. "Trust is hard, especially when it's been broken before." "Which is why this is complicated." Vanessa looked back at him. "Because I want to trust you, Damon. I want to believe that the man I talked to at that table was real, but I'm also terrified that I'm seeing what I want to see instead of what's actually there. So how do we get past that?" "Time," Vanessa said, "and consistency. And you proving through actions that the person you showed me is who you actually are." "I can do that." Damon paused. "But Vanessa, you should know I'm not perfect.
I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to be occasionally distant when work gets intense. I'm going to prioritize Maya sometimes in ways that might seem unfair. I'm going to be human, Vanessa smiled slightly. I can handle human, Damon. What I can't handle is dishonesty. So if work gets intense, tell me. If Maya needs you, tell me. If you're having doubts or second thoughts or complicated feelings, tell me. Don't protect me from the truth thinking you're being kind. I'm strong enough to handle reality. I know you are. Damon reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. Can I ask you something now? That's how conversations work. What changed between 3 weeks ago when you left my office and yesterday when you came back? Vanessa considered the question. I watched you. I know that sounds creepy, but I watched how you handled the investigation follow-up, how you protected the people who testified, how you pushed back when the board wanted to go easier on certain executives. I watched you turn down a bonus and redirect it to employees who'd been harmed, and I realized that everything you did matched what you said you cared about. Actions over words, Damon said. Exactly. You could have taken credit, accepted the money, moved on to whatever's next for someone with your resources. But you didn't. You stayed to make sure the changes stuck. You advocated for people who couldn't advocate for themselves. She paused. You showed me who you are when no one's forcing you to be decent. And that person is someone I want to know better. Damon felt something warm unfold in his chest. I want to know you better too. The real you, not the professional armor you wear at work. Fair warning, Vanessa said. The real me is kind of a mess. I cry at sad commercials. I'm terrible at keeping plants alive. I sing off-key in the car and can't cook anything more complicated than pasta. I'm overprotective of Lily and probably too suspicious of people's motives. The real me has entire conversations with my daughter's stuffed animals, Damon countered. I compulsively organize my sock drawer. I can't watch movies where dogs die. And I absolutely will judge you by how you treat service workers. Vanessa laughed, a real laugh that lit up her whole face. Okay, that last one's fair. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easier now that the hard questions had been asked. Vanessa told him about Lily's obsession with architecture, how she'd spent last summer building elaborate structures out of cardboard boxes and duct tape. Damon told her about Maya's science competition, about her determination to prove that girls could be just as good at STEM as boys. She sounds fierce, Vanessa said. She is, especially after what happened with Tyler. It's like she decided that kid wasn't going to define her. Damon's voice softened. I'm so proud of her. But I also worry that she'll spend her whole life having to prove herself to people who've already decided she's less than. That's the price of being different, Vanessa said quietly. We work twice as hard for half the recognition. Our kids learn that early. But you know what else they learn? Resilience, strength, the kind of character that only comes from overcoming obstacles. You sound like my mother. Your mother sounds wise. She is. She's also dying to meet you. Vanessa's eyebrows rose. You told your mother about me? She was there the night of the party. She heard me on the phone with you after Brad's son hurt Maya. She's been asking questions ever since. Damon smiled. Fair warning, she's protective and opinionated and will absolutely interrogate you about your intentions. Good, Vanessa said. I respect that. Lily's my whole world. Any woman who doesn't protect her child fiercely isn't someone I want to know. The conversation shifted to their daughters, to the complications of single parenthood, to the guilt they both carried about balancing work and family. Damon found himself sharing things he rarely talked about. His fear that he wasn't enough for Maya, that she needed more than he could give her, that his work with his uncle sometimes pulled him away when she needed him most. You're enough, Vanessa said firmly. You're there. You show up. You fight for her. That's what matters. Do you believe that about yourself? Damon challenged. That you're enough for Lily? Vanessa looked away. Most days. Some days I wonder if she'd be better off with a mother who wasn't carrying so much anger about the world. Your anger is justified, and honestly, I'd be more worried if you weren't angry. Anger in the face of injustice is healthy. It's what drives change. Sometimes it just drives exhaustion, Vanessa said. I get so tired of being angry, of having to armor up every day, of teaching Lily to be strong when I just want her to be soft and safe and loved. She can be all those things, Damon said. Strong and soft, fierce and safe. That's not a contradiction. No, Vanessa agreed, but it's a harder path, and I hate that she has to walk it. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of parenthood settling over them like a shared blanket. Outside, the street had grown quieter, the evening settling into night. Can I ask you something potentially uncomfortable? Vanessa said. After everything we've already discussed, I can't imagine what would be uncomfortable. What happens next? With us, I mean. Are we dating? Are we just two people having coffee and seeing what happens? Are we... I don't know, Damon interrupted gently. I think we're two people who recognize something in each other. Two people who want to see if that recognition can become something more. But Vanessa, I don't want to rush this. We both have kids to think about. We both have complicated lives and jobs that demand a lot from us. I think we take it slow. We have more coffee. We talk. We let our daughters meet when it feels right. We build trust day by day. Vanessa nodded slowly. I can work with slow. Yeah? Yeah. Slow is good. Slow is safe. She smiled. And honestly, after everything that's happened, safe sounds pretty good right now. They left Morrison's just after 8:30, standing on the sidewalk in the cold January air. Vanessa pulled her coat tighter, and Damon resisted the urge to offer his, too soon for that kind of gesture. Thank you, Vanessa said, for being honest tonight, for answering my questions, for not trying to minimize or excuse what happened. Thank you for giving me the chance to answer them. Damon hesitated. Can I call you? Not for work stuff, just to talk. I'd like that. Vanessa pulled out her phone. Here, let me give you my personal number, the one I don't use for work. They exchanged numbers, their fingers nearly touching as Vanessa showed him her screen. The almost contact sent a spark through Damon that he deliberately ignored. Slow, he reminded himself. They were taking this slow. Good night, Damon, Vanessa said. Good night, Vanessa. He watched her walk to her car, watched her drive away, then stood on the sidewalk for a long moment before heading to his own vehicle. His phone buzzed as he settled into the driver's seat. A text from Vanessa. I'm glad I came tonight. Damon typed back. Me too. Drive safe. The response came quickly. Always do. Give Maya a hug from me. Damon stared at that message for a long moment, feeling something shift in his chest. Vanessa didn't even know Maya, but she was already thinking about her, already including her in the conversation. That mattered. That mattered more than he could adequately express. He drove home through quiet streets, his mind replaying the evening. The conversation had been everything he'd hoped for. Honest, complicated, real. Vanessa hadn't made it easy on him, hadn't glossed over the deception, or pretended the hurt wasn't real. But she'd also given him a chance, given them a chance, and that felt like a gift he didn't want to waste. His mother was waiting up when he got home, reading in the living room with a cup of tea. She looked up as he entered, her expression expectant. Well? She asked. It went well, Mama. Really well. She forgive you for the deception? She's working on it. We're taking it slow. His mother smiled. Good. Slow is smart with two kids involved. She set down her book. You like her? I do. More than like. Damon sank onto the couch beside her. It's too soon to know what this is. We're both cautious, both scared of screwing up our kids' lives by making bad choices. That's called being a good parent, his mother said. But baby, don't be so scared of making mistakes that you miss out on something good. That woman, she survived 7 years in a place that tried to break her. That takes strength, real strength. And from what you've told me, she did it with grace. She did, Damon agreed. I've never met anyone quite like her. Then don't let fear keep you from finding out what this could be. Take it slow, yes. Be smart, absolutely, but also be brave enough to let her in. Damon nodded, letting his mother's words sink in. She was right. He'd spent 6 months being brave enough to expose a toxic culture, brave enough to stand up to executives who had institutional power. Now he needed to be brave enough to be vulnerable, to let Vanessa see not just the competent consultant or the protective father, but the man beneath all those roles. Over the next 2 weeks, they talked every night. Not long conversations, both of them had bedtime routines with their daughters, but consistent ones. 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, slowly building a foundation of trust through small,
honest exchanges. Vanessa told him about the changes at work, about how strange it felt to walk into meetings without her armor, without expecting to fight for basic respect. She told him about Lily's latest architectural creation, a model of the Sydney Opera House made entirely from popsicle sticks. She told him about her sister, who was skeptical of Damon and wouldn't stop asking questions. Damon told her about Maya's science competition, about his mother's increasingly unsubtle questions about when she'd meet Vanessa, about the follow-up work he was doing with Sinclair to ensure the culture changes stuck. He told her about the nightmares he sometimes had about Maya's call from the party, about his fear that he'd permanently damaged his daughter by not protecting her from Tyler's cruelty. "You can't protect her from everything," Vanessa said one night, her voice soft over the phone. "The world's going to hurt her sometimes. The best you can do is teach her that she's strong enough to survive the hurt and kind enough not to pass it on to others." "Is that what you tell yourself about Lily?" "Every day?" Vanessa paused. "But some days it feels like I'm lying, like I'm setting her up to be hurt over and over by telling her to stay soft in a hard world." "Softness isn't weakness," Damon said. "And staying kind despite the cruelty around you? That takes more strength than becoming hard." "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? What's the point of changing cultures and fighting injustice if we all just become as cruel as the systems we're fighting against?" Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. "You're right. You're absolutely right. I just forget sometimes when I'm tired." "Then let me remind you," Damon said. "That's what we do. We remind each other when we forget." 3 weeks after their first coffee, Damon invited Vanessa to Maya's science competition. She hesitated, aware that this was a significant step, meeting his daughter in a context that mattered. "Are you sure?" Vanessa asked. "That's a big deal, Damon. Maya doesn't know me. This is her moment. I don't want to intrude." "You wouldn't be intruding." "Maya asked if the nice lady from my work who got a promotion was coming." "You told her about me?" "She asked why I was smiling so much when I talked on the phone at night. I told her I was talking to a friend. She asked if the friend was a lady friend. 8-year-olds are terrifyingly perceptive." Vanessa laughed. Okay, I'll come. But I'm bringing Lily. If we're doing this, if we're introducing our kids to each other, we do it together." "Deal." But the science competition was held at the District Community Center on a Saturday afternoon in early February. The space was packed with parents, siblings, teachers, and volunteers, all clustered around tables displaying student projects. The air hummed with nervous energy and excited chatter. Damon arrived with Maya and his mother, finding their assigned space near the middle of the room. Maya's solar system model was already set up, each planet carefully labeled with facts she'd researched. She wore her favorite dress, purple with stars, and her hair was pulled back in 2 neat braids courtesy of her grandmother. "You nervous, baby girl?" Damon asked, crouching down to her level. "A little," Maya admitted. "There are a lot of projects here. What if mine isn't good enough?" "Your project is excellent," Damon said firmly. "You worked hard, you learned a lot, and you should be proud of what you created. Win or lose, you're a scientist, Maya. Remember that." She nodded, squaring her small shoulders. "I'm a scientist." "Damn right you are." He hugged her, breathing in the familiar strawberry scent of her hair. His mother touched his shoulder. "Isn't that your friend Vanessa?" Damon looked up to see Vanessa entering the community center with a girl who had to be Lily. Same dark hair, same serious expression, though Lily's eyes held a spark of curiosity that reminded him of Maya. They were looking around, trying to orient themselves in the crowded space. "Maya," Damon said, "remember I told you my friend Vanessa was coming?" "The nice lady?" Maya's eyes widened as she spotted them. "Is that her, with the other girl?" "That's her, and that's her daughter, Lily. She's 9, and she likes to build things. Want to meet them?" Maya nodded, suddenly shy. Damon stood and waved to catch Vanessa's attention. When their eyes met across the crowded room, she smiled, a genuine, warm smile that made something flutter in Damon's chest. They navigated through the crowd toward each other, meeting near a display about volcanic activity. Up close, Damon could see that Vanessa looked nervous, her hand resting protectively on Lily's shoulder. "Hi," Vanessa said. "Hi." Damon looked down at Lily. "You must be Lily. Your mom's told me a lot about you." Lily studied him with the serious assessment of a child who'd learned to be cautious. "She told me about you too.
You're the one who made sure she got treated fairly at work. I helped, Damon said. But your mom's the one who was brave enough to tell the truth about what was happening. Lily seemed to approve of this answer. She looked at Maya, who was half hiding behind Damon's leg. Hi, I'm Lily. I'm Maya, Maya said quietly. I like your shoes.
Lily looked down at her sneakers, purple with silver stars.
I like your dress. It has stars too.
Stars are my favorite, Maya said, gaining confidence. Want to see my project? It's about the solar system.
I love the solar system. Lily's face lit up.
Did you know that if you could drive a car to the sun, it would take 177 years?
Really? Maya's eyes widened. How do you know that? I read a lot, Lily said. Mom says I'm going to need glasses soon because I read too much, but I don't care. The two girls drifted toward Maya's project, their conversation flowing easily now that they'd found common ground. Damon and Vanessa watched them go, a shared understanding passing between them. That went better than expected, Vanessa said quietly. They're good kids, Damon's mother said, appearing beside them with her purse and a knowing smile. I'm Damon's mother, Mrs. Cross. You must be the Vanessa I've been hearing so much about. Yes, ma'am. Vanessa shook her hand. It's nice to meet you. You too, baby. Now I'm going to get some coffee and let you two watch the girls together. Damon, behave yourself. She squeezed his arm and disappeared into the crowd. Vanessa laughed. I like her. She likes you too. Trust me, if she didn't, you'd know.
They moved closer to the project tables, positioning themselves where they could see both girls while still having a semi-private conversation. Maya and Lily were deep in discussion about planetary rotation. Their initial shyness completely dissolved. They're good together, Vanessa observed. Yeah. Damon watched his daughter explain her project to Lily with animated gestures. Maya needs more friends. After the thing with Tyler, she's been cautious about trusting other kids. Lily too, Vanessa said. She's always been a bit of a loner, more comfortable with books than people. Maybe they can be loners together. Vanessa smiled. That's a nice thought. The competition began with judges making their way through the projects. Damon watched Maya present her work with quiet pride, noting how she'd incorporated everything he'd taught her about speaking confidently and making eye contact. When the judge asked her why she'd chosen this topic, Maya's answer was immediate and heartfelt. Because space is for everyone, she said. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you're from. The stars shine for everybody. The judge smiled and made notes on his clipboard. After he moved on, Lily leaned over to Maya. That was a really good answer. Thanks, Maya said, beaming. As they waited for the results, Damon and Vanessa stood side by side, their shoulders almost touching, watching their daughters bond over a shared love of learning. Thank you for inviting us, Vanessa said quietly. This feels important. It is important, Damon agreed. If this, whatever this is between us, if it's going to become something real, our kids need to be okay with it. They need to like each other. And if they didn't, Vanessa asked, if they hated each other, would that be a deal breaker? Damon considered the question carefully. I don't know. I'd like to think we could work through it, but honestly, Maya comes first always. If something wasn't good for her, I'd feel the same way about Lily, Vanessa interrupted. So I get it. Our kids come first. That's not a flaw, Damon. That's exactly what it should be. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Maya explain something to Lily using wild hand gestures that made both girls laugh. Whatever they were building here, this tentative connection between two families, it felt fragile and precious, something worth protecting. When the results were announced, Maya didn't win first place. She got second, which meant a ribbon and a certificate and the opportunity to advance to the regional competition. But what mattered more than the placement was the way she accepted the news, with grace and pride in her accomplishment, not disappointment at not being first. You did great, baby girl, Damon said, hugging her tight. Second place is really good, Maya said, clutching her ribbon. And Ms. Johnson says I get to do the regional competition now. We'll start preparing, Damon promised. Lily approached shyly with Vanessa behind her. Congratulations, Maya. Your project was the best one here. Thanks. Maya's face lit up. Want to come over sometime? We could build something together.
Maybe a model of the International Space Station. Lily looked up at her mother, hope clear in her eyes. Vanessa met Damon's gaze over the girls' heads, a question implicit in the look. I think that could be arranged, Vanessa said carefully, if it's okay with everyone. More than okay, Damon said.
They made plans tentatively, carefully, two families learning to orbit each other like planets finding their gravitational balance.
As they left the community center, Maya and Lily walking ahead with Damon's mother, Vanessa reached over and briefly squeezed Damon's hand. It was the first time they'd touched deliberately, and the contact sent warmth flooding through him. Thank you, she said softly, for today, for letting us be part of this.
Thank you for coming, Damon replied, for being brave enough to take this step. We're both being brave, Vanessa said. That's what makes it work. Ahead of them, Maya was showing Lily her ribbon, and Lily was admiring it with genuine enthusiasm. Two girls, different but similar in the ways that mattered, building a friendship that might become something lasting. And two adults, watching them, hoping that what they were building would last too. Spring arrived in small increments. A warmer breeze one afternoon, crocuses pushing through the last patches of snow, the sky holding its light a little longer each evening. By late April, the world had softened from winter's sharp edges into something gentler, and Damon found himself thinking that maybe people could soften too, given enough time and the right conditions. He stood in his backyard watching Maya and Lily construct what they'd ambitiously titled the International Space Station version 2.0 out of cardboard boxes, aluminum foil, and an alarming amount of duct tape. The girls had grown inseparable over the past 3 months, their friendship deepening through weekly playdates, shared science experiments, and an ongoing competition to see who could memorize more constellations. It needs more solar panels, Lily was saying, her architect's eye critiquing their work. The real ISS has huge arrays. We need at least 4 more. But we're out of cardboard, Maya protested. Unless we use the boxes from Grandma's closet reorganization. Don't you dare, Damon called from the porch. Your grandmother will have both your heads if you dismantle her storage system. The girls giggled, undeterred. Vanessa appeared beside him carrying 2 glasses of lemonade, her presence so natural now that Damon sometimes forgot there'd been a time when she wasn't part of his daily landscape. They're going to need actual engineering degrees if they keep this up, Vanessa said, handing him a glass. Or at least a bigger backyard. Damon accepted the drink, their fingers brushing in the exchange. Even now, months into whatever they were building together, those small touches still sent warmth through him. Thank you for this, by the way. For lemonade? For Saturday afternoons. For letting Lily spend time here. For being patient while we figured this out. Vanessa settled into the chair beside him, her eyes on the girls. I should be thanking you. Lily's happier than I've seen her in years. She came home from school yesterday talking about how she and Maya are going to be astronauts together. Not separately, together. That's the first time she's talked about her future with someone else in it. Maya's the same way. It's always Lily and I now. Lily and I are going to build a house on Mars. Lily and I are going to discover a new planet. Damon smiled. I love that she has someone who sees the world the way she does. They're lucky, Vanessa said quietly. Lucky to have found each other. The weight beneath her words wasn't lost on Damon. He turned to look at her fully, taking in the way the afternoon light caught in her hair, the peace in her expression that had replaced the constant guardedness he'd first noticed. Are we talking about the girls or about us? Vanessa met his eyes, a small smile playing at her lips. Maybe both. Before Damon could respond, his mother emerged from the kitchen with a tray of fruit and crackers. You two look entirely too serious for such a beautiful day, and those girls need sustenance before they pass out from creative exhaustion. Thanks, Mama, Damon said as she set the tray on the porch table. His mother gave him a pointed look that clearly communicated they'd be talking later, then called out to Maya and Lily. Girls, snack break! The girls abandoned their construction project and thundered up the porch steps, settling cross-legged on the wooden planks with the unself-conscious ease of children completely comfortable in their environment. As they devoured apple slices and cheese crackers, they chattered about their plans for the space station, their conversation a rapid-fire exchange that required no adult translation. Damon's phone buzzed with a message from his uncle. Board meeting went well. Culture audit shows significant improvement. You were right about Vanessa for the marketing VP role.
She's exceeding expectations. He'd been waiting for this confirmation. 3 months ago, when the new executive team had been assembled at Sinclair, Damon had recommended Vanessa for a newly created position, VP of Marketing Innovation. It had been a delicate conversation, explaining to his uncle why he was advocating for someone he was personally involved with, making clear that his recommendation was based purely on her qualifications and track record. Jonathan had listened, reviewed Vanessa's performance data independently, and agreed. But he'd also been clear. Vanessa would succeed or fail on her own merits. No special treatment. No safety net beyond what any other executive would receive. Vanessa had accepted the role with characteristic caution, aware of the scrutiny that would come with being promoted after everything that had happened. She'd worked brutally hard these past months, rebuilding the marketing department's culture, implementing new processes, proving that she deserved the position regardless of who she knew. "That was Uncle Jonathan," Damon said, showing Vanessa the message. "Looks like you're officially exceeding expectations." Vanessa read the text, and something complicated crossed her face. "I needed to hear that. I've been worried that people think I only got the role because of our connection." "Some people will always think that," Damon said gently. "That's not about you. That's about them not being able to imagine a world where competence matters more than connections." "I know, but it still bothers me." Vanessa handed back his phone. "I want to earn this, not just have it given to me. You are earning it, every day. The numbers don't lie, Vanessa. Your team's productivity is up 30%. Employee satisfaction in your division is the highest in the company. You've launched 2 successful campaigns that exceeded their targets." Damon caught her hand. "You're not succeeding because of me. You're succeeding because you're brilliant at what you do." Maya looked up from her crackers. "Mom always says Vanessa's the smartest person she knows. After Grandma, obviously." "Obviously," Damon's mother agreed from the doorway, her eyes twinkling. "But Maya's right. Vanessa, you've got a gift for seeing what others miss. That's not something that can be taught." Vanessa's eyes misted slightly. "Thank you, Mrs. Cross. That means a lot." "It's the truth, baby. Now, I'm heading inside to start dinner. You're all staying, I assume." "If that's okay," Vanessa said. "Of course it's okay. You're family now." Damon's mother said it casually, as if conferring family status was no more significant than offering someone a glass of water. But Damon saw the way Vanessa's breath caught, the way her fingers tightened around her lemonade glass. After his mother disappeared inside, Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. The girls had finished their snacks and returned to their construction project, leaving the adults alone on the porch. "Family," Vanessa finally said. "She called us family." "She did. Damon, are we—" Vanessa turned to face him fully. "What are we doing here? We've been in this holding pattern for months. Dating, but not really dating. Spending every weekend together, but still maintaining separate lives. I'm not complaining. I understand the caution. But I need to know if this is going somewhere, or if we're just stuck." Damon had known this conversation was coming, had felt it building over the past weeks as their lives had become more intertwined, as the careful boundaries they'd maintained had started to feel more like barriers than protections. "I've been scared," he admitted. "Scared of moving too fast and screwing this up. Scared of hurting Maya if things don't work out. Scared of disappointing you by not being enough." "Not being enough?" Vanessa looked genuinely shocked. "Damon, you're the first person I've trusted in years. The first person who's seen me at my worst and stayed. The first person who makes me want to be vulnerable instead of armored. How could you possibly think you're not enough?" "Because I come with complications. My work with Uncle Jonathan means irregular hours and travel. My commitment to Maya means she'll always come first. My history means I've got trust issues that probably rival yours. I'm not an easy person to be with, Vanessa." "Good thing I'm not looking for easy," Vanessa said. "I'm looking for real, for honest, for someone who shows up even when it's hard. And Damon, you've shown up every single day since that night at Morrison's. You've called when you said you would. You've been honest about your fears and your limitations. You've made room for Lily in your life without me even asking. That's not enough. That's everything." Damon felt something break open in his chest, something he'd been holding closed out of caution. "I love you," he said, the words emerging before he'd consciously decided to say them. "I think I've loved you since that night at the party when you refused to let them make you small. when you stood up and spoke your truth, even though you were terrified. I love your strength and your honesty and the way you love Lily with your whole heart. I love that you cry at sad commercials and can't keep plants alive and sing off key in the car. I love you, Vanessa, and I'm done being scared of that. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I love you too. I think I've loved you since you listened to me describe 7 years of pain and actually heard me instead of trying to fix it or minimize it. Since you stood up for Maya with the same fierce protectiveness I feel for Lily. Since you showed me that strength isn't about being invulnerable, it's about being honest about your vulnerabilities and choosing trust anyway. They sat there for a moment, the weight of those words settling between them like a bridge finally completed. From the yard, they could hear the girls arguing good-naturedly about structural integrity, their voices bright with the unself-consciousness of children who didn't yet understand how rare it was to find someone who truly understood you. So what now? Vanessa asked, wiping at her eyes. Where do we go from here? Forward, Damon said simply. Together. No more holding patterns. No more waiting for the perfect moment or the guarantee that nothing will go wrong. We just move forward and figure it out as we go. I can work with forward. Vanessa leaned over and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. It wasn't their first kiss. That had happened 2 months ago, tentative and brief after a particularly good dinner. But this kiss felt different. It felt like a beginning instead of a question. When they pulled apart, Maya was standing at the bottom of the porch steps with Lily beside her, both girls watching with expressions that ranged from curious to gleeful. Are you guys boyfriend and girlfriend now? Maya asked with 8-year-old directness. Damon looked at Vanessa, who was blushing but smiling. Yeah, baby girl, I think we are. Finally, Lily said, rolling her eyes in a perfect imitation of her mother's exasperation. We've been waiting forever. You've been waiting? Vanessa laughed. How long have you two been conspiring? Since the science competition, Maya admitted. We decided you should be together so we could be sisters. Not actual sisters, Lily clarified quickly, but like family sisters, the kind you choose. Damon felt his throat tighten with emotion. How would you two feel about that? About our families becoming one family? The girls looked at each other, some silent communication passing between them, then turned back to the adults with identical grins. We'd feel good about it, Maya said. Really good. But we get to plan the wedding, Lily added. We already have ideas. Wedding? Vanessa squeaked. Nobody said anything about a wedding. Yet, Damon said, surprising himself with the word. But looking at Vanessa, at the girls, at the life they'd been building together piece by careful piece, the idea didn't seem premature. It seemed inevitable. Nobody said anything about a wedding yet. Vanessa's eyes widened, but she was smiling. Are you proposing right now? Because if you are, you're doing a terrible job of it. There should be romance, planning, a better location than your mother's porch. I'm not proposing, Damon clarified. Not yet, but Vanessa, I'm saying that I want to. Someday. When the time is right. When we've built enough trust and foundation that the question feels like the natural next step instead of a leap into the unknown. Okay, Vanessa said softly. Someday. I can work with someday. The girls cheered and immediately began planning a wedding that involved an astronomical amount of stars, a space station theme, and what sounded like a live rocket launch. Damon and Vanessa let them dream, content to sit on the porch and watch these two children who'd found each other against all odds, who were showing their parents that connection was possible even when trust felt impossible. Dinner that evening was chaotic and perfect. Damon's mother had made her famous pot roast, and the girls fought over who got the last dinner roll while the adults talked about everything and nothing. Afterward, they all settled in the living room with a movie the girls had been begging to watch. Maya and Lily curled up together on the floor with blankets while Damon and Vanessa shared the couch. Somewhere during the second act, Vanessa's head found Damon's shoulder, and his arm settled around her with the ease of a gesture they'd performed 1,000 times before. His mother, watching from her chair with knowing eyes, smiled to herself and said nothing. When the movie ended and it was time for Vanessa and Lily to head home, the goodbye took longer than necessary. The girls exchanged elaborate handshakes they'd invented. Vanessa hugged Damon's mother with genuine affection, and Damon walked them to their car, stealing one more kiss in the darkness while the girls were distracted with loading Lily's backpack. "Thank you for today," Vanessa said against his lips. "For saying it first, for being brave enough to move us forward." "Thank you for letting me," Damon replied, "for trusting me despite everything." "Always," Vanessa promised. "We're in this together now. All the way." He watched them drive away, their taillights disappearing around the corner, then stood in his driveway for a long moment looking at the stars. They were the same stars Maya had loved since she was small enough to need him to reach high shelves. The same stars that had witnessed Tyler Hutchins's cruelty and the corporate culture that had enabled it. The same stars that had looked down on the holiday party where everything had changed. But tonight, they felt different. Tonight, they felt like witnesses to something being built rather than something being broken. They felt like promise instead of pain. Inside, he found his mother cleaning up the kitchen while Maya got ready for bed. He helped with the dishes, the domestic rhythm comfortable and familiar. "She's good for you," his mother said without preamble. "Vanessa, she makes you softer without making you weak." "She does," Damon agreed. "I didn't know I needed that until I found it." "And those girls," his mother shook her head in wonder. "The way they've bonded. It's special, Damon. Real special." "I know, Mama. You planning to make this permanent? Don't think I didn't hear that yet you threw in there." Damon smiled. "When the time is right. When we're both ready. When it feels less like a risk and more like a certainty." "Love's always a risk, baby, but some risks are worth taking." She dried her hands and turned to face him fully. "I'm proud of you. For what you did at that company, yes. But more for what you've done here. For opening your heart again. For showing Maya what healthy love looks like. For being brave enough to choose partnership instead of staying safe in solitude." "Oh, I learned from the best," Damon said, hugging her. "You taught me that strength means choosing love even when you're scared." "Damn right I did. Now go tuck your daughter in. She's been waiting for you." He found Maya in her room, already under the covers with her stuffed elephant, but she wasn't sleepy. Her eyes were bright with lingering excitement from the day. "Daddy, are you really going to marry Vanessa someday?" Damon sat on the edge of her bed. "Maybe, if she'll have me. How would you feel about that?" "I'd feel happy," Maya said immediately. "Lily would be my sister, kind of. And Vanessa's nice. She listens when I talk about science stuff, and she doesn't treat me like I'm just a kid." "She treats you with respect," Damon said, "because she sees you clearly. That's important." "Daddy?" Maya's voice got smaller. "Do you think Tyler learned to be nicer since his dad got fired and they had to move?" The question caught Damon off guard. He deliberately avoided mentioning the Hutchins family for months, not wanting to keep that wound open. "I don't know, baby. I hope so. People can change if they want to, if they're willing to do the work." "I hope he did," Maya said. "I hope he learned that being mean doesn't make you strong. That would be good for him." Damon felt his eyes sting with unexpected tears. Here was his daughter, the one who'd been hurt so badly, hoping for her bully's redemption. Here was the softness his mother had talked about, the kind that didn't come from weakness, but from a strength so deep it could afford to be generous. "You're an incredible person, Maya Cross," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You know that?" "You tell me every day," Maya said, smiling, "but I like hearing it." "Good. Because I'm going to keep saying it until you believe it all the way through." He kissed her forehead. "Sleep now. Dream about space stations and sisters and all the good things coming. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. More than all the stars." He turned off her light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her settle into sleep. Then he made his way to his own room, where he lay in the darkness thinking about the strange path that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he'd been a man on a mission. Expose the culture, document the harm, create change. He'd succeeded beyond his expectations. Sinclair Corporation had been transformed from the inside out. Brad Hutchins and Stephen Whitmore were gone. New leadership had instituted real accountability. Employees who'd been silenced for years were finally being heard. But the real change, the kind that mattered most, had been personal. He'd found Vanessa in the wreckage of that toxic culture. He'd watched Maya develop a friendship that showed her that trust was possible. He'd learned that strength wasn't about standing alone.
It was about being brave enough to let the right people stand beside you. His phone lit up with a message from Vanessa. Lily's asleep. She said tonight was the best night of her life. Thank you for giving her that. Damon typed back, thank you for giving Maya a sister and for giving me you. The response came quickly. We're building something good here, something real. I'm not scared anymore. Me neither, Damon wrote,
and realized with a start that it was true. The fear that had kept him cautious, that had made him hold back even as he moved forward, had finally released its grip. He was ready to trust completely, ready to build a life that looked nothing like the one he'd imagined 6 months ago, but somehow felt exactly right. Summer came early that year, arriving in a rush of warmth and green that transformed the city overnight. By June, Damon and Vanessa had settled into a rhythm that felt less like dating and more like partnership. Shared dinners most nights, alternating whose house the girls slept at on weekends, coordinated calendars that made room for both work demands and family time. One Saturday morning in late June, Damon woke to find Maya standing beside his bed with an expression of barely contained excitement. Daddy, wake up! We have to go to the park. Now! What's wrong? Damon sat up, immediately alert. Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Vanessa and Lily are there. They're waiting. Come on! She pulled at his arm with 8-year-old insistence until he stumbled out of bed and into clothes. His mother was already up, drinking coffee in the kitchen, with a smile that suggested she knew exactly what was happening. Better hurry, she said. Don't want to keep them waiting. The park was quiet this early, the morning sun slanting through the trees in golden shafts. Damon let Maya lead him down the familiar path toward their favorite spot, a clearing near the pond where they'd spent countless afternoons feeding ducks and talking about life. Vanessa and Lily were there, standing beside a blanket spread with what looked like an elaborate picnic. But it was what was written in the grass that made Damon's heart stop. Using flowers, stones, and what appeared to be carefully arranged sticks, the girls had spelled out a message. Will you marry us? Damon looked from the message to Vanessa, who was smiling even as tears streamed down her face. The girls insisted, she said. They said we'd been talking about someday for too long, and they wanted to make someday happen now. We planned everything, Maya announced proudly. Lily did the design, I did the message, and Vanessa's got the important part. But Vanessa stepped forward, and Damon saw that she was holding something, a small box that she opened to reveal a simple silver ring. I know this is unconventional, Vanessa said. I know traditionally the man is supposed to ask. But Damon, I'm tired of traditional, tired of waiting for the perfect moment. This is our moment, imperfect and real and ours. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me? And let our daughters be the sisters they already are in their hearts? Will you choose me every day, the way I choose you? Damon looked at her, this brilliant, fierce, vulnerable woman who'd survived 7 years of institutional cruelty with her integrity intact, who loved her daughter with a fierceness that matched his own, who'd been brave enough to trust him despite every reason not to, who was standing here now, taking the risk of asking instead of waiting to be asked. Yes, he said, his voice breaking. Yes to all of it. Today, tomorrow, every day. Yes. The girls cheered, and Vanessa slipped the ring onto his finger with shaking hands. Then she was in his arms, and he was kissing her while their daughters danced around them celebrating, and his mother appeared from somewhere behind the trees with a camera to capture the moment. Later, much later, after they'd eaten the picnic breakfast the girls had prepared, after they'd called Uncle Jonathan with the news and endured his knowing laughter, after they'd made preliminary plans for a small ceremony in the fall, Damon and Vanessa sat by the pond while the girls played. I can't believe you proposed to me, Damon said, still marveling. I can't believe I waited this long, Vanessa replied. Life's too short to wait for perfect, Damon. And this, us, our girls, our messy, complicated, beautiful family, this is as perfect as it needs to be. Damon pulled her closer, watching their daughters build what looked like a castle out of sticks and mud at the pond's edge. Maya's laughter rang out bright and unguarded, the sound of a child who'd learned that hurt didn't have to define her, that cruelty could be overcome, that trust was possible. You know what I realized? Damon said. That night at the party, when everything fell apart, that wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning.
The beginning of real change at Sinclair. The beginning of us. The beginning of Maya learning that standing up for yourself matters. All of it started there, in that moment when everything seemed broken. Sometimes things have to break before they can be rebuilt better, Vanessa said. We were both broken, in our own ways, but we rebuilt each other into something stronger. No, Damon corrected gently. We were always strong. We just learned that strength doesn't mean standing alone. It means having the courage to let the right people stand with you. Vanessa smiled and kissed him, soft and sweet in the summer sunlight. Around them, the world continued its rhythm, birds singing, water lapping at the shore, children laughing. The same world that had once felt so hostile now felt full of possibility. They stayed at the park until the sun was high, then gathered their things and their daughters and headed home. Not to separate houses anymore, but to the life they'd start building together in earnest. A life built on honesty and trust, and the kind of love that chose to be brave instead of safe. As they walked, Maya slipped her hand into Damon's while Lily took Vanessa's, and somehow, without planning it, the four of them ended up linked together. Two families becoming one. Two single parents who'd learned that you didn't have to do it alone. Two daughters who'd found in each other the sister they'd always needed. And in that moment, walking through the park on a summer morning with his future wife beside him and his daughter's hand in his, Damon Cross Carrington understood something fundamental. The fight for justice, for dignity, for change. It mattered. It would always matter. But what mattered even more was this: the people you chose to love, the family you built through honesty and courage, the moments of simple joy that reminded you why the fight was worth it. The stars would still be there tonight, watching. But for now, under the bright sun, surrounded by love he'd been brave enough to trust, Damon was exactly where he needed to be. Home.